300 years ago, in an Irish family settlement, some elf ladies were sad to see their guest, Andrew, leaving. They asked their little Andrew why he was leaving and if he could stay a little longer. Andrew thanked the elven ladies for their hospitality and generosity during his stay. He mentioned that he learned a lot, but he still needed to go back to continue the Truth Society's research. Andrew, a first-grade researcher of the Truth Society, stated that even though it was difficult, he could not delay his departure any longer and hoped they understood. One of the ladies assured him that his beauty would never fade from her heart, even after time passed. Andrew leaned in close, saying he wished he could keep such a cute face by his side always, which made the elf lady panic a little. The elf lady got flustered because everyone was watching, but another lady called for them to stop bothering their guests. As the guests were leaving, someone called out, "It's Lady Sage," and another person worried about getting scolded. Andrew breathed heavily as he looked at Lady Doris, who seemed composed despite the situation. Lady Doris asked Andrew if he was going home today, and he replied that he was just about to say farewell to his beautiful lady. Doris questioned if he had finished another prophecy, and Andrew confirmed it was a very important one about his family's fate. He admitted it was impossible to finish in one go, but Doris reminded him that being an elf means having a lifespan close to forever. Doris explained that to regain her master's blessing, she needed enlightenment from her master or favored subjects, no matter how long it took. Andrew offered to ask the Truth Society for help if she needed any information, believing that while everything changes, truth is eternal. Andrew confidently declared that in at most 200 years, he would become a key figure in the Truth Society, and then he would definitely help her. Doris patted his head affectionately, thanking him, her cute little guest. Doris then spoke about how elves treasure important people and things more because of their long lives, though there are few things worth remembering. Andrew reacted with embarrassment, saying he knew that was why she didn't remember things, showing some internal conflict. Doris nostalgically touched his hair, recalling when he was much shorter, which made Andrew exclaim about how many years ago that was and to stop treating him like a child. Doris playfully challenged him to give her a reason not to see him as a child or a guest, and Andrew promised to store this moment deep in his memory. She asked for his name to be told to the elf in front of her, and Andrew began to state his name with dramatic tension. The scene jumps 300 years later, showing Andrew Russell, now the vice president of the Truth Society, on a call asking, "Andrew?" He then spoke into the phone, saying it's been a while, milady, as a skeleton dragon statue stood ominously in the rain outside the Central District Truth Society HQ in Naken. The camera focuses on the massive skeleton dragon statue in the heavy rain outside the grand building of the Truth Society HQ. The scene shows Andrew's office nameplate, Vice President Andrew, and then Walter Leonard is shown waiting. Walter Leonard, the chief of alchemy, moved a chess piece while talking to Andrew. Leonard commented on how unexpected it was that the glamorous Irish family has resurfaced after hundreds of years. Leonard teased Andrew that the crush from his youth has reappeared, but now Andrew is an old man, and he saw Andrew looking out the balcony into the rain. Leonard continued to tease Andrew about failing to win the woman he loved despite his womanizing, warning him to be careful about his funding getting cut. Leonard noted that the vice president is still the most desired noble candidate, but Andrew countered that 300 years have passed, so who knows if she changed. He then suggested moving on from the topic. Roel Phage, the chief of mechanics, interrupted to mention that someone took on Wilda's bounty mission, which meant they would spend a lot of money soon. Leonard was shocked that someone took the very old and dangerous bounty mission on Wilda, a cruel, destructive black mage, asking who would try to get themselves killed. Phage told Leonard to get out of his weird lab sometimes, noting that it's not surprising no one took the mission before because the funding for each department is tight to that bounty. Phage suggested that Leonard's messy research project would be delayed, and then they started arguing about whose work was more useless or messy, mentioning things like autonomous hair washing upside down versus multifunctional choking collar. Leonard, annoyed, claimed the useless inventions were his subordinates' brilliant work and said he would pass on the feedback, suggesting they invite Leonard for a demonstration later. Leonard scoffed in refusal, and they decided to continue their chess match, but Leonard accused Phage of trying to distract him to cheat. Phage, pretending to be hurt, pointed out that even though Leonard falsely accused him, he still considers him his best friend. Leonard sarcastically noted that anyone can be Phage's friend if they have money, but Phage claimed his research was very useful for the final stage of clay idol using the Philosopher's Stone from Lady Doris. Phage credited Lady Doris for the Super Philosopher's Stone, which made Leonard skeptical, saying he's heard immediately finish the final step many times before they ask for more funding after failures. Phage angrily retorted that it was only because Leonard's philosopher's stones weren't pure enough, which meant his skills were terrible, leading to a tense standoff. After a moment of tension, Leonard changed the subject, asking again who took Wilda's bounty mission to find out which destructive character was bored. Phage revealed that this time it wasn't a destructive rank but a petrifying hunter, the pale night watcher Burton Ackerman, who wants to use the mission for his achievement. Phage explained that Ackerman reached the destructive rank during testing after injecting himself with tainted blood, which is why his request was approved. Leonard agreed but wondered if Ackerman could really find Wilda, and the president of the Truth Society arrived, interrupting their conversation. The president asked if they had dealt with their end of the problem, and Andrew replied he hadn't expected 300 years to pass and that he felt old now. Phage teased Andrew about being melancholic over finding his crush again, but Andrew said Doris is an elf, so of course she hasn't changed. Phage warned Andrew not to say out loud that he didn't think about Doris when he was womanizing back then, especially for funding's sake. Phage then asked Andrew about the bookstore, questioning if the Iris family really offered to serve the bookstore owner as their master. Andrew clarified that they served the being asterisk behind asterisk him, and the secret instrument tower had transferred a file for them to check out. Andrew casually mentioned that Leonard's department funding was being cut by 30% starting next month, which shocked Leonard. Leonard protested, saying he wouldn't have believed Nokken had an undiscovered indescribable entity, but since Joseph wrote it he can't ignore it. Andrew suggested that since they seem friendly, they don't need to rush to investigate, but Leonard insisted it's still problematic that such a being exists in Nokken. Leonard asked what Andrew meant, and Andrew revealed that Wilda also has a connection to that bookstore. Andrew instructed them to send Guide Ackerman there to be their eyes to see if it's too dangerous to let that indescribable entity exist. Leonard thought they should be more cautious, but Andrew said their priority is the spawn of the magic mirror, so letting Ackerman go is the best plan. Andrew admitted he was using Ackerman but insisted they must find out the bookstore owner's motivation, as just calling him friendly isn't enough to maintain the trust of millions in Nokken. Andrew reflected that the incident should make them think about what they are actually doing, as the Truth Society's purpose is order, not just knowledge. He warned that when an organization gains too much authority, it decays from within, pointing out their surveillance failed by letting the Scarlet Cult and the White Wolf escape. Andrew stated that if they don't handle this right, the credibility of the Truth Society will plummet, which is a price they can't afford. Andrew told Leonard and Phage that he knows they can provide the internal monitoring system the Truth Society lacks, which President Maria also wants. He added that if Maria wasn't fighting an indescribable entity right now, she would be the one giving them this authority, so they should let Ackerman test the waters first. Andrew asserted that if necessary, they don't have to fear the indescribable, because even gods die, emphasizing that only truth is eternal. The narration then switched to a news report about an explosion at the gasworks between 21st and 23rd Street leading to major casualties, caused by a thunderstrike on neglected equipment, which led to a flash flood. The report mentioned firefighters stopping the fire in the 23rd Street, which became a clear cutting point between undamaged houses and complete ruins. The perspective shifted to the protagonist, who woke up surprised by the news of the explosion, noting he only slept for a moment and didn't even wake up to the gas explosion. He recalled that the only notable thing yesterday was a young lady buying 30 books and chasing away people looking for undocumented immigrants. He noted the strange coincidence of an explosion happening right outside his store this morning, thinking life is strange sometimes. He felt lucky that the destruction stopped in front of his door, otherwise his life in this other world might have ended. The protagonist then thought about young Lady Doris, who insisted on giving him a potted plant before leaving since she couldn't just accept his gift. He mentioned that according to her, the seed should be quite valuable, something about it having its own mind and feasting on desires which he thought were just cute gimmicks for young girls. He thought Lady Doris was cute for still believing such things, but since she isn't that old, a young girl's heart is understandable. He hoped that once it grows bigger, it would purify the air and improve the look and environment of his store. The protagonist smiled, thinking how exciting it was and hoped it would grow into something nice. The final shot shows the small seedling in the dirt, with the protagonist watering it, silently thinking. 1 week passed, and the bookstore owner was very happy because the seed he planted finally turned into a blooming plant. He felt his hard work paid off, and the little plant looked quite good. He always wanted to keep plants, but they never survived long, so the success felt important, but he thought it was strange that it bloomed so fast, in just a week. He noticed the plant only had one flower, unlike normal roses which grow as shrubs, but he remembered Miss Doris said it was a rare species, so it must be special. He figured the quick growth and easy care might be the selling points for this flower, especially since even he could keep it alive. Now, he decided to show off this beautiful flower to his customers. He thought decorating with the pretty flower would put customers in a good mood, maybe even making them buy more books because details matter, and then it was time to open the store. After opening, the owner felt lonely without anyone to talk to and wondered if he could give some soul-healing words to new customers that day. Meanwhile, deep inside the red flower, a strange little eye with white tentacle-like strands was visible. Outside in the rainy night, a character arrived at 23rd Street at what looked like a very ordinary bookstore. The man lit a cigarette in the rain and wondered if this was the right place. He observed that the outside of the shop did not look friendly to customers, or perhaps the owner did not care about selling books at all. The visitor thought the owner was intentionally making the place look deserted, and his identity was revealed as Burton Ackerman, a provisional destructive hunter known as Pale Night Watcher. He reconsidered, thinking the deserted look was intentional, and decided to use his supernatural sense of smell as a hunter to find clues. He found a faint hint of ether in the rain, even though some time had passed since it was last there. He confirmed the smell was wild as ether aura, noting it was a decent cover-up from the black-scaled faceless, but his nose could still track it. He realized the source of this aura was some kind of sentient spirit creation, which seemed strong enough to guard the entrance effectively against less skilled mutants. The hunter noticed the ether aura felt stronger here than in other places, confirming the Truth Society's intel that Wilda might be using this place as a headquarters. Another man, possibly from the Truth Society, was shown holding a piece of paper, suggesting intelligence gathering was in progress. He thought the place looked more like a temporary hideout than a main base for now, and according to their intel, Wilda had visited this bookstore twice. Judging by how faint the ether traces were, Wilda seemed to visit more regularly than other people. Because of this, the hunter was sure Wilda would return, giving him a chance to deal with him, and this must be why the Truth Society hadn't made a move yet. He figured the small groups of the White Wolf and Scarlet Cult were keeping the Truth Society busy, as he could still smell the smoke and blood from the last fight. He noted that they not only handled the cleanup, but also relocated the people who were here. The Secret Instrument Tower and the Truth Society were experienced in covering things up, but that should not be an issue for them anymore. Now that someone named Murphy was dead, the fate of those rats was sealed, and the hunter thought Tusk serves her right. He hoped the dead person understood her mistake, even though it was bad luck that she met the elven great sage while visiting the Truth Society. He thought that even without Doris, they would have failed anyway, and he wondered how powerful the spawn of the magic mirror was to make people lose their sanity. Putting those thoughts aside, the hunter reminded himself that he shouldn't be too curious. It was bad for his job, and his mission was just to wait for his target to get his destructive rank. He remembered the wisdom of his senior. The most important qualities for hunters are caution and patience. Even though the bookstore had no traces of ether now, he couldn't be careless, so his objective was to act like a normal customer and do some simple spying. He felt confident in his disguise skills, believing he could make even another destructive rank suspect nothing until he struck. The hunter was focused on handling the bookstore owner, knowing that even if he was just a normal person, he was an informant chosen by Wilda, so he needed to be careful not to expose anything. Finally spotting the owner, who was welcoming, the hunter stepped inside as the bell rang, executing his mission. The hunter entered the store, seemingly protected by a clear raincoat in the pouring rain. He stood at the entrance as the door swung open with the sound of the bell ringing above. He entered smoothly, dripping water onto the wooden floor. Upon entering, the hunter thought the layout was unremarkable and he could not feel any supernatural aura, but then he looked closer. He saw Wilda's creation and thought it showed decent craftsmanship. He confirmed his suspicion that it could automatically detect murderous intent and attack. The hunter was confident in his disguise skills and thought he was safe as long as he meant no harm, and he would be able to handle the bookstore owner, who was Wilda's informant. Bookstore owner welcomed him with a big smile, clearly excited about a new customer. The owner was happy because it had been a while since he had any visitors, making him feel like he was back when he had no customers. Although peace was nice, he wanted people to talk to so he could give soul-healing words and earn some money. He realized no one visited, even after the big explosion, leading him to think about renovating the store, which would solve his no customers, no business, no money cycle. That's why he couldn't let any new customers go, feeling his conversation skills were eager to be used to increase his customer numbers. The owner asked the hunter if he was there to borrow, browse, or purchase books and offered help if he had any questions. The hunter coolly replied, "Just browsing." The hunter inwardly complimented his acting skills, thinking his answer was perfect for someone wandering around bored after hearing the news, and he planned to finish his reconnaissance quickly. As the hunter was about to dismiss the place as having nothing noteworthy, he suddenly saw something that made his eyes widen in shock. He looked again, seeing a rose, which he thought looked beautiful and expensive, maybe even noteworthy in this plain bookstore. However, he quickly dismissed it, thinking, "But it's just a rose," and then something strange began to happen. The hunter was shocked because he couldn't move, sensing that the flower was extracting something from his soul. He panicked, thinking, "Is this a trap? Did I get caught?" But he couldn't detect any magical fluctuation. He heard the owner's voice again, cheerfully saying, "If you have any questions, just ask me. Browse however you like," which he interpreted as mocking intimidation. The hunter realized the owner saw through his disguise and was deliberately provoking him, wanting to see his fear. He realized the owner's seemingly enthusiastic smile was actually full of scornful malice. The hunter felt utterly humiliated, thinking death would be a quick escape, but the owner wanted to destroy his entire being slowly, which was terrifying. The most horrifying part was that he felt something deep in his soul was being torn out and feasted upon by that flower thing. He felt completely powerless, unable to move or use his consciousness, terrified of slowly being eaten away until he died. He desperately thought, "Why doesn't he just kill me?" Calling the owner a sadistic devil, and admitted fault, saying he gave up. Just as he was screaming for help internally, the owner appeared, asking if there was something he wanted to ask, and pointed to the flower. The owner happily asked, "You think this flower is pretty too?" The hunter realized the flower successfully attracted the customer's attention, and the owner gloated that his hard work was paying off. Suddenly, the hunter could move again, letting out a huff. He laughed weakly, realizing what it felt like to be on the brink of death, feeling anger, shock, helplessness, and desperate imploring. He even lacked the strength to scream out loud, but he managed to say, "Yeah, the flower is pretty." He thought if he didn't feel it so strongly in his soul, he would have thought he was hallucinating from tainted blood. He decided that the destructive approval didn't matter. It was good just to be alive. As the hunter stood up, seemingly recovered, the owner was still smiling, while the flower transformed. The flower mutated, sprouting many more eyes that stared fiercely. The hunter started laughing hysterically, saying, "Ha ha ha ha." He admitted the flower was pretty, but the feeling of being eaten alive was what scared him the most. He concluded that the destructive approval didn't matter, and it was good to be alive now. Ackerman had completely lost his will to fight. Now, he just wanted to sit in a wheelchair and think about the meaning of life. The scarred man complimented the plant, saying it was pretty. He seemed to be in awe of the strange rose with an eye in its center. The bookstore owner thanked him for the compliment and said the plant must be happy too. The owner was clearly pleased that this customer noticed and appreciated his flower. He thought about how profit comes from small accumulations and that details really matter, remembering Miss Doris said the plant has a mind of its own. He figured if he showed how much he valued the plant, the customer would feel appreciated. If that worked out, he would surely gain another regular customer, especially since he cared for the plant a lot after nurturing it daily. The owner was happy because he put his daily effort into watering and nurturing the plant, showing he cared deeply for it. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed, and the scarred man felt a sense of dread as the owner looked down at him. The scarred man was terrified, sweating as he looked up at the imposing figure of the bookstore owner. He started thinking about what was going on, realizing the owner was not only toying with people but was also very close to that strange flower. It was as if the owner saw the monstrous flower as his own child, unlike even dark mages who only worshipped their created beasts. He thought that even the most taboo black mages wouldn't treat something so vile with such affection. The scarred man wondered what kind of being the owner was, his fear growing as he considered a frightening possibility. He asked himself if the owner was not human, perhaps just wearing a human skin like that rose. If this was true, everything would start making sense to the scarred man. The lack of ether he felt, the owner's twisted personality, and his unbelievable power. He concluded that the being before him must be a higher existence. The bookstore owner then calmly told the scarred man he could see the effort put into the flower, only speaking the truth. The scarred man realized the Truth Society must have known what was happening here and led him here as cannon fodder. He cursed the Truth Society, wondering why someone like Wilda would use this place as a hideout. He felt this place was too dangerous and needed to leave quickly before the owner noticed his desire to escape. The scarred man tried to act naturally while thinking he needed to hurry before the owner spotted him. The owner, noticing the scarred man looking pale, stopped him and offered him a chair to rest, saying it was good for relaxing and chatting. The scarred man panicked, thinking he had been found out for trying to leave and perhaps the owner was mad about his insincere compliment. He quickly denied feeling unwell, but the owner sighed, thinking this customer was too stubborn to show weakness even when tired. The owner then analyzed the customer as a typical, stressed-out office worker around 35, approaching midlife crisis and clinging to his youth. Seeing his lack of purpose and bewildered look, the owner decided this man was definitely worth swindling, or rather, steering. To deal with him, the owner planned to lower his guard with some comforting words first. He assured the man to sit down, noting no one else was around to know what happened. The owner told him to relax and see him as an old friend, offering to listen if something was bothering him, claiming he was great at opening up people's hearts. The scarred man was horrified by the phrase opening up hearts, wondering if the owner meant it literally, seeing it as a threat or intimidation. He worried something terrible would happen if he didn't sit down and explain himself. He questioned if he should tell the truth, but realized that telling the truth would only lead to him being opened up like that horrifying vision he had. The owner apologized for talking too much while the man was still standing, telling him not to be so polite and to have a seat. The scarred man felt humiliated but couldn't resist the mental and physical torment, wanting to cry but knowing it would ruin his career as a hunter, so he forced himself to hold on. The owner was pleased the man sat down, seeing it as the first step completed, though he knew getting someone like him to confide would be hard. He thought he needed to take the initiative, slowly prying open the man like an oyster to see the soft heart inside the hard shell. The scarred man felt like the owner was looking at him like food and decided to think twice before speaking. The owner sensed the man's hesitation and guessed it was about pushing yourself, which was a turn the man was trying to use to get his destructive approval. The scarred man realized the owner knew everything but was still chatting, making him wonder what the owner was up to. The owner thought his technique of speaking vaguely was working and it was time for his soul-healing words. The narration explained that pushing yourself was a professional term used by Mr. Lin that encapsulated a lot of things, perfect for a customer who felt lost and stuck. Meanwhile, the scarred man thought he better tell the truth because he couldn't hide anything from such a terrifying being, especially since he was just trying to get his rank. He thought about how hunters, whose power came from tainted blood, were seen as disposable tools by the Truth Society and black mages. He felt they claimed their system was fair, but they just looked down on the hunters, who achieved things through their own strength. The owner interpreted the man's anger as being exploited by his boss for a promotion without getting respect, leading him to realize he was a corporate slave and got fed up. He concluded the man was a victim of the 996 work culture and that fortune was tricky, offering to understand the problem. The owner then asked the man if he had thought about finding another way. The phrase another way struck the scarred man like a spark, making him question what the owner meant. The owner continued, asking if he was willing to let them use him as a tool now that he knew the truth, and if it was worth it. He pointed out they likely gave him nothing good in return and demanded a lot without respect. The scarred man admitted he was not okay with being treated that way, then began to reflect on the nature of hunters. He explained that hunter power comes from tainted blood of dream beasts, which is unstable and leads to corruption of sanity and eventual lycanthropy. He revealed that powerful hunters often turn into dream beasts in their last insane moments, causing destruction. The Truth Society and the Secret Instrument Tower saw hunters as risky gambles that could turn into enemies anytime, so they didn't care much for them. He recalled that before being assessed by the Truth Society, he had to complete sanity tests. The scarred man admitted he couldn't blame the Truth Society because hunters do carry that risk, but he was still proud to be a hunter. He explained that hunters use their mundane bodies and the tainted blood to turn the extracted dream beasts in their souls into weapons, hunting beasts every moonless night in life or death battles. He compared hunters who lack the spirit of knights or the wisdom of scholars to other mutants, stating their souls were not inferior. After 30 years as a hunter, he felt he was already old and on the brink of collapse, unlike mutants his age. His tainted blood was from the pale man, exceeding the national limit, and each time he used the power, his sanity weakened, making him fear his body couldn't last. He mentioned taking high-strength sedatives from the Truth Society's pharmacy, but even those were starting to fail, and he needed a new plan. He took Wilder's bounty mission to use as evidence for his destructive approval, but realized he was misled and became their tool. He questioned what good the rank would do if he still wouldn't get the respect he needed, and felt lost without the Truth Society. He realized they monopolized everything, and he felt he had to rely on them to have a place, thinking it sounded like a massive monopoly. The owner noted that if he didn't have the determination or if the company was too corrupt, it wasn't worth it, and since the man didn't consider other options, something in his mindset was stopping him. The owner suggested giving him encouraging suggestions could help him break through, then asked the hunter if he truly thought the authorities were the only way. He challenged the hunter, asking if it was truly impossible to find a place without them, urging him to think about his current situation, the future, and others like him. The owner clarified he wasn't being an alarmist or inciting him, but just hoped he could make a choice he truly wanted, asking if he understood. The scarred man excitedly agreed, realizing he needed to find his own path and use his own strength to control his future, regardless of what the authorities said. He realized he was subconsciously despising the Truth Society while accepting them as the absolute authority. He asserted that hunters could prove themselves without help, asking why they needed others to do that for them. The owner thought the hunter's words were inspiring and that he had opened his eyes, but was surprised at how determined the man was. He noted the customer had a tenacious heart despite his midlife crisis bewilderment and was willing to start a business. The owner decided to give more soul-healing words, guaranteeing he wouldn't have to repeat them. He advised that simple compromise won't bring peace and might even make them think he's weak, leading to further exploitation because his power alone might not be enough. He then suggested that the hunter wasn't alone and still had partners he could ally with, asking how he felt about making new experiences. The owner made it clear the choice was up to him, advising him to consider carefully to avoid future regret. He offered to recommend someone if the hunter thought it through, mentioning a customer named Jai-Jitsu who might be able to help. The owner finished by saying he would introduce the hunter to Jai-Jitsu another time. The bookstore owner tells the man that he has a customer named Jai-Jitsu who might be able to help him, and promises to introduce them later. The man recognizes the name Jai-Jitsu, clearly showing shock at the mention of her name. He realizes that the young lady mentioned is indeed the person he was thinking of, and the bookstore owner confirms this. The bookstore owner smiles broadly while holding a cup, confirming that the person he mentioned is that young lady. The man sips his drink, confirming to himself that it really is her. He accepts this information and then asks the owner what exactly he expects him to do now. The man confronts the owner, asking if this whole situation is part of his plan, and the owner calmly replies with an affirmative yes. Exactly. The man accepts this, saying he knew it, and reflects that ever since a certain moment, he felt things were being set up. The owner clarifies that to get this result, the mastermind might have set everything in motion long before this moment. The man is stunned, asking how that is even possible, questioning if someone can predict everything, implying they are not an all-knowing God. The owner thinks to himself that for now, his conversation skills are good enough to handle the situation, especially with a customer who won't easily admit their problems. He decides he needs to use vague questions to guide the customer's thoughts, knowing how they interpret things depends on their own feelings. The owner is prepared with soul-healing words, confident they can handle whatever the man has planned, and since he made the customer reveal his thoughts, he just needs to calm his worries. He considers that the customer wanting to start his own business is a good thing, because many people cannot handle the pressure of working long hours like 996 or 007, as starving is one thing, but going bald is worse. The customer is being bullied by his boss and treated like a tool, which is bad for his health, so finding a new way is better than continuing that life. The owner decides this is a better choice for the customer, but recognizes changing from a corporate slave to a business pioneer is hard, needing both determination, a plan, and money. He feels that at the very least, the customer shouldn't have any worries left. To ensure this rare new customer stays interested, the owner feels he needs to offer some reassurance, thankfully mentioning that young lady Jai can help guarantee he won't be jobless. He recalls a saying about fighting fire with fire, suggesting that in Nakan, no company is more dominant than Low Resources, which monopolizes mining rights in the lower city district and has a hand in almost all major industries. The scene shifts to a large metallic object with an LR symbol on it, suggesting a piece of technology or structure. This image displays the logo for the Low Resources Development Corporation, a golden cross shape with LR. Inside, the narration explains that this massive corporation is controlled by young lady Jai's father, and it basically controls all mining in the lower city district. also being involved in almost all major industries in Nakan. The image shows a dark, imposing cityscape, reflecting the immense and somewhat frightening influence of the company in Nakan. The owner notes that in Nakan, the influence is unimaginable, affecting daily life and businesses wherever one looks deeply enough. The view focuses on puzzle pieces scattering against a dark blue background, suggesting disconnected parts of a whole system. Even as an outsider who has only been in this world for 3 years, the owner can feel the company's influence deeply. He mentions that soon after arriving, he investigated the company's history out of curiosity. The scene transitions to a dark room where the owner enters, and the text mentions how quickly he found out about the company's long history, counting its predecessors. He found out that the company's predecessor was actually in charge of an army in the lower city district. The screen shows a computer with various windows, and the text says the history is very complicated and much of it's unconfirmable now. The view shifts to 2 figures in dark uniforms, and the narration explains that the dominance of low resources is due to how Nakan is built. The text explains Nakan is divided into the upper and lower city districts. The upper city is a man-made steel city detached from the ground, like a giant sphere from above, while the lower city district is the area below. The owner is shown typing on a keyboard while looking at a bright blue screen, visualizing the city structure. The text continues that Nakan is as big as a province in China, and while the central district has named streets, the rest only use letters and numbers for addresses. It is stressed that the upper city is entirely artificial and has no natural resources, which are all found in the lower city district. The scene shows the owner's simple home, with a grocery bag bearing the LR logo in the foreground, emphasizing the everyday presence of the powerful corporation. The view shifts to a dark, massive structure hanging above a foggy area, representing the lower city district, also called the underground and transition zone. The narration states that only the Truth Society currently has access to the roads to the lower city district, which are kept under strict lockdown. The image shows a dark, crystalline, glowing cavern, indicating a dangerous environment where the lower city residents are. This is because the lower city citizens are descendants of those infected by the strange illness from Azir's fog, forcing them into quarantine for millions of years, creating a completely different ecosystem. A figure in a tattered cloak walks down a dimly lit, rough street in the lower city. A small, hooded figure holding a pickaxe stands near glowing purple crystals, suggesting they are mining. A larger figure calls out to someone named Red, interrupting the scene. The larger figure asks the smaller one what they are doing there, and the small figure excitedly calls out to Grandma. A green-skinned woman with ear fins expresses maternal care, saying she cannot leave her child out of her sight. She tells the child it's time for food rationing and to come home with her, holding the child's hand. The child, Red, excitedly shows Grandma a rock they dug up, claiming they should get another bowl of food, and Grandma praises Red for being impressive and offers her own chair. The child looks up thoughtfully, while Grandma holds the child close. The child asks Grandma what it's like above them, wondering if it's where their ancestors lived. The child questions if the people above also have to dig rocks daily just to eat, while Grandma looks up, full of wonder. Grandma tells the child they will see for themselves someday, and since she is old, the child should tell her story to the people above when that time comes, mentioning the Church of the Plague. Grandma is shown holding a large book with swords crossed over a tree, while the text states that the Church of the Plague originated in the lower city district and is still their main belief. The owner, back in his study, realizes the connection, noting that the separation of the districts led to organizations specializing in resource gathering for the upper city. The competition eventually resulted in the formation of the massive Low Resources Development Corporation, which now controls access to the lower city district. The owner finds the situation absurd and wishes someone rich would buy the distribution rights for his books. He then recalls that the only daughter of the Low Resources boss became his regular customer, thanks to his conversation skills. He thinks that having this connection is good for maintaining the relationship, and it should be easy for someone like her to give the man a job. He tells the man that Jai Jixu should be able to help him out, mentioning he helped her solve problems with guidance a few days ago. He adds that she is due to return the books in a few days. The man realizes everything makes sense now, finally understanding how the situation in Nakan evolved. He recalls that the White Wolf Hunters and the Scarlet Cult's Black Mages cooperated because Helix lost a battle against Jai Jixu's spider. He remembers that Helix had to sacrifice his second-in-command, Casper, and escaped alone, and the reason for the loss was that Jai Jixu, his former prey, suddenly got stronger. The man now understands Jai Jixu received help from the bookstore owner. He realizes that the owner is willing to help because he used his words to create conflict between the hunters and the Truth Society. The man acknowledges the owner wants to bring the Truth Society down, but admits the owner's words are incredibly enticing, even if he is toying with people. He wonders if the path offered involves organizing the scattered hunters into a force that can rival the Truth Society and the Secret Instrument Tower, which would change Nokken's whole status quo. He concludes that for the owner, this is all just a game, and he is lucky to be a pawn in it. The man thinks the owner intentionally let him know his intentions by using that flower to extract his strongest desire at the start, but didn't let it consume him entirely. Now he has no intention of earning the Truth Society's approval or finishing the evaluation. Instead, he is eager to try out this irreversible decision. He states he really looks forward to raising the banner of the hunters, even knowing it's dangerous. He stops, however, being curious about the part regarding borrowing books. The owner smiles, saying he got him and they are back to business after some hard work, adding he was just about to mention the books. The owner tells the man this is his first time doing this and he will face difficulties, so he is a useful book for him to look at, starting a business with zero capital. The man connects the dots. The bookstore owner gave Jai Jixu a book, she received power, and followed his instructions. He realizes the connection is obvious. The owner used his books to give her power and guidance. The man asks if this means all those books are filled with forbidden powers. The owner assures him the book is suitable for his current situation to find a new path and realize his aspirations, so people stop treating him like a tool and he gets the reward he deserves. The man questions the title, Void Sacrifice, wondering if his previous experience with lycanthropy was a hallucination. He confirms he can still feel traces of it, meaning a channel to the void clearly still exists. He realizes those things have noticed him, and this is the new path. The owner confirms this, stating that being opportunistic is an essential skill, and who wouldn't want to do business without any cost. He explains that the gifts come from others who have reached the end of the road, and getting the hang of it will make things easier. The man agrees, saying he can open the channel to the void whenever he wants after being pierced, with one end on him and the other in the imperceptible void. He understands that as long as he follows the channel and gives a suitable sacrifice, he will receive their gifts, confirming it is about being opportunistic. He acknowledges it also depends on their moods, calling it a great business without a cost. The man admits the beings inside the void are indescribable, and he doesn't know how to describe the power of this bookstore owner to make them hand out gifts whenever he wants. He thanks the owner for his teachings and says he knows what to do now. The owner warns him that it will be a long journey and he needs to be mentally strong, because being opportunistic alone doesn't guarantee success. He hopes the next time they meet, the man will have achieved what he wants. The man assures him he will keep it in mind and won't let him down. He calls the owner a selfless and magnificent being, feeling it is his greatest honor to be his pawn, and declares the path ahead will be much more interesting. The owner waves goodbye, telling him to come back soon. The owner sighs, musing that another lost soul has found their way after receiving Mr. Len's teachings. The owner stands with a demonic shadow behind him, his face lit up, while he thinks life should be inspiring. Outside Egg Manor, under a dark, rainy sky with lightning striking, stands a grand building with a glowing entrance and a fountain in front. The scene moves toward the entrance gate to the manor, marked as Nokken's isolated island in the central district, and then focuses on a strange, large moth-like creature near a window. The moth creature clings to the bright, glowing window frame, showing its detailed wings. Looking through the rainy window, one can see the luxurious interior, including a fancy chandelier hanging from the ceiling. On the windowsill, a green frog makes a sound, and inside, a young woman with pointed ears, wearing casual clothes, sits in a chair. A closer look at the young woman shows her focused expression as she sits, her hands near a wooden table. The focus shifts to the table where incense-making tools, a censer, and some rolled documents are laid out. The young woman suddenly looks intense, holding up the lid of the golden censer. The object is identified as a Northland smoked incense seal, showing the ash inside it. Her hands carefully use the tools to compress the ash, use the seal mold, and prepare to add more incense powder. There is a bright flash and a loud sound as the scene changes dramatically. The woman is still seated, looking toward the window where the light is very bright. A close-up on her intense eyes is followed by a panel showing the seal mold being removed, revealing an L and R symbol. Next, she lights the incense, and the instruction says to relish the incense as smoke rises around her. She sits back at the table looking composed, and then she adjusts her glasses with a knowing look. The view zooms in on her face as she pushes her glasses up, and then shows her hand pulling up a sheer black stocking or glove. Her hand rests near some yellow flowers and she smiles, stating that preparations are complete. Looking down from above, she sits before the strange, tentacled book, ready to relax and read now that the preparations are done. Shot from above shows her appearance, and then a hand, glowing with dark purple energy, opens the book. The book opens, and a close-up of her wide, golden eyes shows her deep focus. The room is shown with its grand, ornate decorations, and she is seated at her desk, looking toward the light. A dark, smoky shadow spreads out from under her chair, indicating a change in power or atmosphere. The smoke is contrasted with the calm, lit incense burner, while outside, heavy rain is pouring down. The sound of heavy rain is emphasized as the view looks up towards the roof of the building. Man in a suit stands outside in the heavy rain near the manor entrance. Two men are now standing near the brightly lit entrance, and the sound of splashing water from the rain is very loud. One man is startled by a bright flash of light, and a brilliant white light fills the center of the frame. The light comes from a luxury car's headlights screeching to a halt in the rain, with several men in suits standing around it. One of the men, dressed like a butler with a pale face, holds an umbrella open next to the car. A close-up shows a serious-looking man in a suit, and then a foot steps firmly onto the wet ground. The butler holds the umbrella over the arriving man, who steps out and is greeted by another suited man. The main arriving figure walks into the opulent hall, bathed in golden light from the ceiling fixtures, surrounded by bowing subordinates in suits. A close-up shows one of the subordinates smiling smugly, while the main figure's father figure seems to be looking on. The daughter figure reacts with a subtle expression, followed by a close-up of her pointed ear. She lets out a relieved breath after the tense moment, looking at the book resting on the table. She relaxes into her chair, noting the incredible energy from the book and how much she has improved recently. She reflects on how getting stronger also improves her control over her body, shown by a hand gesture. Her form is momentarily replaced by a vision of her inner beast, a wolf covered in chains, as she states she can control every hair follicle. She thinks that expanding to that extent would be torture, but the main point is that she has almost fully subdued the dream beast inside her. The chained wolf is seen clearly, and she states that if she succeeds, she can become a destructive mage. She wipes her eye, emotional, realizing all this progress is thanks to Mr. Lin, whose favor is greater than just controlling her tainted blood. She turns, emphasizing that blood and beast are just spirit and flesh and the foundations of life, and then walks towards a window. Controlling her blood is the first step. The true way to become strong is using the beast's power, but she must advance more before repaying the favor. She realizes she has only just managed to control the blood already in her, and gathering more tainted blood would make her terrifyingly strong. She declares that this is not the limit of a hunter's strength, as strength is political power, and she wants hunters equal to the Truth Society and other powers, but she needs companions for expansion. She recalls refraining from telling anyone because she feared losing control of the tainted blood, but now she has proven it safe, and expansion can begin. She holds the book confidently, declaring it will be the hunter's gospel and Mr. Lin their guide to the future, before the scene shifts to Lin Jai right now. The scene shifts to a Chibai Lin Jai peacefully watering a rose, enjoying a quiet day. The Chibai Lin Jai is followed by a shot of someone walking upstairs with a determined stride. The person pauses and the view shifts to an overhead shot of a luxurious bedroom, seemingly empty except for furniture. The person is shown putting an item into a drawer, followed by a quick shot of a car door or object moving quickly. The person, wearing gloves, places the book back into the drawer just as a loud knocking sound starts. The young woman with pointed ears reacts to the loud knocking, looking annoyed or ready. A maid in a white dress stands at the grand door, announcing that dinner is ready. The young woman agrees curtly, and then we see the maid standing expectantly while the father figure appears. The maid holds a position of waiting, and then the shot shows the grand hall where the father and daughter will dine. The young woman, with her face shadowed, appears ready for the meeting. As they walk into the hall, the father figure is seen, and the daughter pauses, indicating she has something to say. The maid looks on silently as the daughter stops walking toward the opulent dining area. The daughter stops her advance, and a close-up shows her intense, scrutinizing gaze meeting her father's. She confronts him, asking if he has business with her, and he responds with a questioning look, calling himself father. The father is revealed as Jai Bonong, head of the Low Resource Development Company, asking her for a little chat. His expression turns stern as he presses for a conversation, which he immediately recognizes as suspicious. She points out that someone secretive like him wouldn't arrange dinner on a whim, even with his daughter, as the maid watches nervously. She continues that he never eats at home, concluding he must want to discuss something, prompting him to say, "You've grown." The father, seeing her childlike chibi transformation, is momentarily surprised, but then says that as an adult she can make her own decisions. She interrupts, saying as a father he would be remiss not to offer advice, to which he agrees, noting he never asked about her work before. He explains he didn't ask because groups like the White Wolf or the Hunter Association are just pawns to be used, and he thought K and Max were enough, but now it's different. He warns her that if she gets involved, she represents their company, demanding if she understands, as the daughter reverts to a knowing smile, surprised by her father's reaction. She confirms she understands, which is why she agreed to talk, then reveals she intentionally let him see the planner in her diary. She states she wrote it on purpose so his assigned people would find it and force him to come back, looking very smug. Her father is shocked, asking why she would write it down for others to see, and she counters by asking why she would ever keep a diary. The room goes silent as he realizes she has grown up, admitting it would have been hard to trick her if she still saw him as a child. He tells her if that's the case, she must have confidence to convince him, and demands to know her bargaining chip. A close-up of her eye shows her satisfaction at catching him by surprise, and she tells him the answer he seeks is not there. She implies everything in the mansion is controlled by iron will, and she can tell him her plans as she is just a pawn of her lord single-handedly. She then presents her bargaining chip, which is revealed in a dramatic, dark blue light engulfing the scene. The focus shifts to her body stretching and contorting with dark, tentacle-like appendages, revealing a glowing red jewel beneath her. These extensions spread across the room, which she claims is controlled by iron will. She offers to tell him her plans, stating the plan was made by her lord single-handedly and she is just a pawn, then asks what she will bargain with. The scene shows her holding the book again as she states her bargaining chip. She confidently sits back, proclaiming it's this, referring to the book, as thunder sounds dramatically. The final crop is the announcement page with chapter information and recruitment details. In the place called Knockin', everyone knows the name Jai Bonon. As the biggest boss of low resources, Jai Bonon keeps meeting important people from many groups every year. He deals with groups like the Truth Society, Secret Instrument Tower, hunters, mages, and even normal people, and he knows how to handle them all without losing control. Under his control, Low Resources not only controls all the mining rights in the lower city but is also deeply connected with the secret world of mutants. A lot of the workers in the Low Resources Development Corporation are actually mutants, and when Jai Bonon stares with his yellow eyes, he can see right through someone's thoughts. A man with long hair and a blindfold tells his master that the young lady is ready inside, which makes the master nod. The master tells the blindfolded man, Max, to bring out that package, and Max agrees, saying now is the best time. The master tells the young lady that she will become a mutant now and asks if she is ready for the new situation and responsibility that comes with this power. He explains that because of their genetics, most northerners are normal people, and to become mutants, they need to rely on tainted blood to become hunters, which carries a risk. As the director of Low Resources, he cannot risk the about 10% chance of corruption, or the company would be ruined if things went wrong. He assures her that he personally checked this tainted blood, and its high quality minimizes the chance of corruption or lycanthropy, perhaps only causing small changes to her ears or limbs. He also tells her it won't mess up her looks too much, and then presents her with a personal gift, which is a very pure philosopher's stone. This stone has a resurrection brand made by a very special white mage, and it is called the Tear of Flame. The master tells his daughter that she is destined to succeed in the mutant world because he is barred from it, and she replies that she will not let her father down. The girl who was training gets up, and another woman named Kay promises to crush anyone who tries to harm her, but the girl says that's not what she meant about her father. She explains that her father has a high status and is well respected among mutants, but most importantly, he is a businessman who risks everything for profit. She believes that this time, she is his big bet, as he chose to let her join the mutant world and support her in controlling Low Resources. She feels that only this way can the mega cooperation become a giant force that scares even the mutants, and even though it follows her wish, it is also his wish in some way. She feels a test is set for her, and she needs to grow very fast, because true growth only happens when you beat your past, immature self. She then asked Kay to help her pass this most important test in her life. Kay happily agrees, saying she will help her fulfill her wish even if she has to sacrifice her life. A thought passes through someone's mind, suggesting that maybe Jixu, the daughter, realized something, as she is his daughter after all. Meanwhile, Max, reporting to the master, says the Truth Society's intelligence network has gathered all the information about the hunter groups in Nakan. The master asks if a decision has been made on which group Jigsaw should join. Max confirms that he decided it will be Helix's White Wolf, because the information shows the leader is calm, sensible, and a great strategist. The master agrees it's not a bad choice and asks Max if he knows why he is sending him with Jigsaw, to which Max replies it's about watching her every move. Max is told there is only one thing he needs to do. If anyone wants to hurt Jigsaw, he must protect her with all his might. The master says Jigsaw is steadfast, calm, and patient, so she will be an excellent hunter, which is why he supports her choice to become one. He mentions that helping her get a spot in a hunter organization is easy, but anything more in a short time will be difficult. Master trusts Kay's loyalty and skills but notes she is impulsive and not helpful when logical thinking is needed. He states that Jigsaw's composure and intellect will be her weapons, because letting a mutant control a huge company like Low Resources would upset the big players at the top. If trouble starts, it would mean the end of Low Resources, so he must be very careful. He decides that from now on he will start keeping a distance from her in public and keep her away from anything about Low Resources. He thinks the more rebellious she acts, the better, hoping she focuses on hunters instead of the company, with the best result being her not caring about the company at all. This way, she can freely develop herself in the mutant world, as Low Resources is just the starting point, not the final goal for Jigsaw. He tells Max this is the last thing he will ask, to protect his daughter until she can truly stand on her own. That he feels he has secured all the basic protection, but all fledglings must leave the nest eventually, and once she starts that path, there is no turning back. He wonders what surprises Jigsaw will bring, looking forward to it as a father, and imagines the smile of satisfaction he will have when she grows beyond his expectations. Suddenly, the scene shifts to an inner monologue of the father, admitting he was careless and didn't expect to be fooled twice by his daughter. He realizes that the relative he thought he understood the most can now predict his thoughts and actions. He thinks about how the young lady, who was once clumsy with etiquette, is now a confident hunter who can even fool her own father. He questions if the book she holds is her bargaining chip, noting that someone else seems to have changed her a lot. He tells her the book's origin is the important thing, and that plan carries a dangerous storm, being too risky for Low Resources because it involves too many variables. He stresses that making such a decision needs extreme caution, and she can't just jump in randomly. The crucial thing for him is what Low Resources can gain, or in other words, what the person behind her wants to gain through the company. The daughter confirms that her father knows about her connection with the bookstore owner. She quotes someone saying that a businessman will do anything for enough profit, suggesting her father is no exception. The father counters that they are different from ordinary businessmen, pointing out that logically, he wouldn't have become so powerful so quickly without the tainted blood. She smiles and says all of this power is a gift from the book, which is not something easily bought anywhere. She then asks him what he thinks would happen if Low Resources got the distribution rights for this book. Would it be good or bad? The father mentions that according to the secret instrument tower intel, the Class I being is still very mysterious. He thinks that if one contacts Mr. Lin without much thought, it could be problematic, as the bookstore owner always follows the logic of a bookstore owner. However, he admits that if they follow his wishes, Mr. Lin is actually quite nice. The daughter tells him that based on her last few visits, the owner has his own way of doing things, but she isn't good enough to represent Low Resources and discuss things with Mr. Lin. She suggests that if he thinks this deal is possible, it's best if he talks to Mr. Lin himself, and then he can decide whether to throw the proposal away or accept it. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a dark, rainy, and desperate situation where people are arguing that they cannot keep fighting the secret instrument tower. Someone shouts that the situation is getting worse, they have many casualties, and less than a tenth of them are left standing. Another person argues they cannot stop, but someone else points out that the secret instrument tower hasn't even sent their top knights, so winning is impossible. The leader shouts to stop talking like that and that they must keep going, only to be told by another person that the Scarlet Cult is gone, and they don't have enough energy to keep hatching the spawn of the magic mirror. When someone yells at Master Helix for the insolence, he screams silence. He reminds them that their goal is to hatch the spawn of the magic mirror, not to win against the secret instrument tower, and if they hatch it, they will win. He yells that he doesn't want to hear any more doubts, and then announces that the Truth Society will send a shipment of Sky Silver stones to the 78th Street in 3 days. He demands that they must get those stones this time, asking if they understood. The hooded followers respond with a loud "Why yes, sir." Back to the follower who seemed worried. He sighs because a box of sky silver stones won't be enough to hatch the spawn of the magic mirror. He wonders if that would mean the end of White Wolf, but then a dark presence speaks, saying that is his problem. The dark presence offers, I can help you solve it. The man in the chair exclaims in shock, asking who is there. The master Helix stands up, surrounded by dark, snake-like purple energy, and a shadowy figure with glowing eyes appears. The mysterious figure states that the spawn of the magic mirror is like a torch, and life is the most precious fuel. A young woman asks for help to pass the most important test of her life, and the woman with the long light hair smilingly agrees, saying she will help fulfill her wish. The agreement is sealed with a firm handshake, where the woman promises to help even if she has to sacrifice her life. Then, there is a brief, dark image of what looks like a syringe filled with red liquid, followed by a thought bubble suggesting that this must be what Jigsaw thinks. A well-dressed man, standing behind a fancy door, watches this interaction, thinking that since she is his daughter, it is not surprising she could figure things out. The scene shifts to two figures talking. One reveals that the Truth Society's intelligence network has gathered all the information on hunter groups in Nakan, and asks if a decision has been made about which group his daughter should join. The decision is confirmed to be Helix's White Wolf, and the other figure acknowledges the choice, noting that Helix is supposed to be calm, sensible, and a great strategist. The man in the vest agrees that it is not a bad choice, and asks if the other person knows why he is sending them to be with Jigsaw. The blindfolded figure replies that they know it is for monitoring her every move, and states there is only one thing they need to do. The well-dressed man dramatically declares that if anyone tries to hurt Jigsaw, the other person must protect her with all their ability. The blindfolded figure seems to react with intense focus, showing a single visible eye under the blindfold. The man continues, praising his daughter, saying she is steadfast, calm, and patient, believing she will be exceptional as a hunter. He explains that this is why he supports her desire to become a hunter, and getting her a spot in an organization is easy. However, he notes that anything more significant in a short time will be hard, and though he trusts Kay's loyalty and skill, she is impulsive and not good for logical times. He instructs that Kay's composure and intellect will become Jigsaw's weapons when needed, adding that letting a mutant control a big company like Low Resources would worry the big players at the top. He warns that trouble would mean the end of Low Resources, so he must be cautious, and plans to start distancing himself publicly from her. He wants her kept away from Low Resources matters, hoping the more rebellious she acts, the better, as he wants her focus on hunters. The best outcome, he thinks, is if she doesn't care about the company at all, only having an image that allows her freedom to develop in the mutant world. He stresses that Low Resources is just the starting point for Jigsaw. The blindfolded figure agrees, saying this is the last request, and asks for protection until his daughter can truly stand on her own. The man then places a hand on the blindfolded figure, pleading for protection. The blindfolded figure starts to respond, but the man interrupts. The blindfolded figure then swears upon their life, and the man leaves the room, closing the door. The man stands by the brightly lit window, looking thoughtful as he sits down later. He opens a book, which displays top-secret items like the elixir of immortality, the goblet, and a glowing pink jewel. The man smiles, satisfied that he has guaranteed basic protection for his daughter, as all fledglings eventually leave their nests. He contemplates the path ahead, wondering what kind of surprises Jigsaw will bring, looking forward to it as a father. He imagines the smile of gratification he will have when she exceeds his expectations. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a man looking utterly shocked and terrified. This shocked man is then seen looking at Jigsaw, who is holding up the mysterious book, declaring it is her bargaining chip. In a large, dark room lit in blue, there are shadowy, tree-like structures on the table where Jigsaw and the man are sitting opposite each other. The man reflects on how careless he has been, admitting he lost twice in a row to his daughter, realizing the relative he thought he knew can now predict his every move. He murmurs that he sees how it feels now, as the young lady he remembers clumsily learning manners is now a confident hunter who fooled her own father. Jigsaw points to the book, and the man asks if that is her bargaining chip, looking annoyed. He admits that someone, likely the person Jigsaw is connected to, changed her a lot, but he cannot be convinced by just the book. The man states that the important thing is not the book, but where it came from, warning that the plan carries a brewing storm and is too risky for Low Resources due to too many variables. He stresses that such a decision needs utmost caution and asks what Low Resources, or the person behind it, really stands to gain. Jixie smiles, knowing her father understands her connection to the bookstore, and then brings up an old saying about businessmen doing anything for profit. As wine is being poured, she implies that her father is no exception to that saying. Jixie, holding her drink, tells her father that she thinks he wouldn't be an exception. Father takes a sip of his drink, looking stern. He replies that while that is true for an ordinary businessman, they are different. Jixie counters that logically, she shouldn't have gained such power so quickly without more tainted blood, stating all this power is a gift from the book. She emphasizes that such a book is not something one can buy anywhere, then asks her father if getting the distribution rights for it would be good or bad for low resources. The father pauses, deep in thought about the consequences. He states that according to intel from the secret instrument tower, the being connected to the book is still very mysterious, so making contact without thought is risky. He recalls that Mr. Lin, the owner, always follows the logic a bookstore owner should, and if one follows his wishes, he is quite cordial. The father mentions he doesn't have the quality to represent low resources and discuss things with Mr. Lin, suggesting Jixie should talk to him herself. He tells her to decide herself whether to throw the proposal in the bin after talking to the owner, as he is not comfortable with that approach. Jixie then challenges him, saying he can either throw the proposal away or accept it. The scene abruptly shifts to a chaotic, stormy night outside a crumbling building, where people are shouting about their desperate situation, many casualties, and the inability to keep fighting the secret instrument tower. Inside, a group of cloaked figures are arguing around a table. Some despair that they can't win since the secret instrument tower hasn't even sent their best knights, while their leader insists they cannot stop. They reveal they lost the Scarlet Cult and lack the energy to continue hatching the spawn of the magic mirror. The leader, Master Helix, yells for silence when someone shows insolence, angrily reminding them that their only goal is to hatch the spawn, not win against the tower. He announces that the Truth Society will deliver Sky Silver Stones to 78th Street in 3 days, demanding they must get them this time. Some figures look doubtful, noting that one box won't be enough to hatch the spawn, which would mean the end of White Wolf. But they quickly agree to the plan when confronted. One cloaked figure walks away dejectedly. The figure sighs, realizing a box of Sky's silver stones is not nearly enough to hatch the spawn of the magic mirror, and that admitting this would mean the end of White Wolf, making him wonder if there's anything he can do. A dark, shadowy entity appears before him, offering help to solve his problem. Master Helix reacts with shock and shouts, "Who's there?" As the shadows start to creep closer. Helix slowly steps away from his chair as the dark purple shadow entity surrounds him, revealing shadowy snakes and a figure wearing a top hat with glowing green eyes. The shadowy figure steps forward, looking dominant, while Helix looks absolutely terrified, his eyes wide. The mysterious figure states that the spawn of the magic mirror is a torch, and life is the most precious fuel. The story begins outside the secret instrument tower headquarters in a heavy rain. A man and a woman stand before the entrance, approaching the building. They enter a place marked as the conference room. Inside, the former chief of intelligence, a strong-looking man with a mechanical arm, is seated, drinking something cold. He looks intensely at the person asking him a question. The man asks if the questioner wants to know what he thinks about the bookstore owner. Before answering, the chief of intelligence asks what the listener thinks of when they hear the word indescribable. The narration sets a dark tone, showing a glimpse of a powerful, possibly evil-looking being. He asks if indescribable means the ancient dragon from the prehistoric era. Next, he wonders if it refers to the giant from the first era, while showing a massive fiery attack. Then, the image shifts to a dark, skeletal king surrounded by skulls and two powerful figures. The chief wonders if it refers to the Elven King from the second era, showing a close-up of a gloved fist gripping a weapon. This is followed by an image of an elf-like warrior holding a sword under a bright moon. Below the warrior, a small, scared-looking figure is shown, perhaps a victim. Then, two distinct women appear, one engulfed in flames, and another with long black hair, looking away. Finally, he asks if indescribable means the four primordial witches who represent absolute power, showing a beautiful elven witch smiling. He states that the power of those beings is undeniable, but then shows the bookstore owner sitting grandly on a throne over water, suggesting a different kind of presence. The chief declares that the bookstore owner gives a different impression, not just powerful, but grand, and asks if the listener doesn't get it. To explain, he says they will use a metaphor about moths. He explains that moths have something called phototaxis, making them instinctively fly towards a fire. He adds that even though they are small, they still have basic survival instinct, and then shows a magical staff glowing. He poses a hypothetical question: if a moth could see the sun, what would it do? He asks if the moth would fear the sun's heat and light. He then asks if it would only admire the glamour, before stating the moth would only do one thing. That one thing is to abandon all thoughts and follow its instinct, even if its body and soul turn to ashes while approaching the sacred fire. The chief concludes that for a normal person, that's what the bookstore owner is like, implying the owner is like the moth drawn to a divine fire. He continues by saying the bookstore owner now wants him to handle the candela problem, and then gets angry, questioning if the listener thinks he would refuse. The scene cuts to another man looking shocked in a chair, as the chief asserts that no one knows more about the sword than he does. The subject of candela is brought up. It's described as a terrifying weapon that even the indescribables fear. It's said that no matter how strong someone is, they cannot resist its soul erosion, which always leads to doom, and the secret instrument tower always chose the best Radiant Knight as its master to control it. But as the Radiant Knights died, the tower lost hope for the curse of candela, until the book lent by the bookstore owner showed the power to suppress the sword. The chief believes this means the bookstore owner has a better way to keep it, stating that the owner wants the sword because he saw the chief's pain and wants to save him. The chief concludes that he should give the bookstore owner full responsibility for candela, saying it's the best course of action. As he stands up, the subordinate begs him to wait a minute, asking if he considered the consequences if candela were used for evil, and if it would hurt the secret instrument tower's reputation. The chief dismisses these concerns, saying he never thought about such things. He states that image management is best left to the Elder Council, and what they as knights trust in is the justice in their hearts. Chief turns away, emphasizing their trust in inner justice. A loud sound is heard as a door closes and a digital screen shows playback finished, indicating a recording was just played. A woman in the External Liaison Center confirms that what just finished playing was the interview recording of Knight Joseph suggesting the transfer request. The scene shifts to the Elder Council's inner office, where hooded figures are gathered around a glowing sphere. The hooded members of the Elder Council convene in their inner sanctum, focusing on the glowing central object. Two members look on intensely during the meeting. Outside the meeting room, the Chief of Intelligence, now walking downstairs, is greeted by subordinates who wish him well and ask if he has eaten. The chief walks with his imposing presence, his cybernetic arm visible. The female subordinate quickly flips open a file, informing her teacher that she has the results of the White Wolf's recent activity and their initial analysis. The chief just grunts in response, telling her to go on. The subordinate explains that the White Wolf hunters know the structure of Nakan much better than they do, comparing them to scurrying rats. She recounts how, whenever they followed the hunters, they vanished without a trace, which is seen in a rainy street scene with hooded figures. Searching street by street was too inefficient, so they made a new plan. Connecting the hunters' most frequent spots, they managed to figure out part of their non-existent secret passage. As the subordinate stands outside in the rain reviewing data, this successfully reduced the White Wolf's area of operation, leaving the chief to react with a look of grim realization. The chief comments that the city is too old, and the real maps are only in the heads of the long-time residents, contrasting this with the successful deduction of the secret passage. He emphasizes that getting a full map is almost impossible as no one else has the knowledge that White Wolf has, suggesting someone is helping them. The subordinate, startled, suggests that someone is helping the White Wolf. The scene shows a close-up of the subordinate's shocked eyes, followed by Chibai-style panels showing her looking serious and then impressed. She reports that in the last few days they destroyed almost 3 hideouts and captured over 20 White Wolf hunters who are currently being interrogated. However, the captured members are stubborn, and when they tried using mental spells, their minds were too fragile. The subordinate explains they must have injected tainted blood to the limit beforehand, causing them to turn mad when stimulated, as shown by a photo of a man's ravaged face. She points out this is an ingenious way to avoid interrogation because they can't expose information if they are already insane, showing a hand holding the photo. The chief laughs, calling it ingenious, and states they won't worry about exposed information if the enemy is already insane. He points out that if they opened their brains, they'd only find a pretty flower. And then the subordinate notes that White Wolf must know they are cornered, as they are acting crazier with less logic. She adds that they not only raided resources, but also destroyed and slaughtered just for fun, causing panic among civilians, which the logistics division is struggling to cover up. The chief acknowledges the trouble, saying that for ordinary citizens of Nakan, mutants are just a myth, and hiding the truth is hard work for the logistics division. They have to invent stories like gas leak explosions to hide everything, which the subordinate calls a balding hazard for the cleanup crew. She agrees it's hard work, Then the chief asks again about any pattern in the White Wolf's destruction. The chief tells her to forget about that, and then reminds her that she mentioned there was no pattern in the White Wolf's recent acts of destruction and massacre. The chief explains to his subordinate, Claude, that things can't be judged on the surface, stating that the spawn of the magic mirror entices minds, and their ambition should overshadow other desires. Suggests it's unlikely they need to vent their madness now, implying their actions must have a specific purpose, perhaps to divert attention. The subordinate confirms they are doing it for a reason, mentioning that they've only found evidence that the White Wolf collects body parts after killings, possibly to replicate Murphy's rituals, but they can't find any rituals needing such conditions. The subordinate then brings up a question: can the Truth Society really not provide a complete blueprint of Nakan? She argues that even a fraction of it would be enough to find architectural flaws and uncover secret passages and chambers, which shocks the chief's mechanical hand and the subordinate in chibi form. She continues that some of these passages were built by the Truth Society itself, and asks if he now understands why they refused to provide the blueprint. The chief calls her pretty dumb and jokes that cracking open her brain would reveal a gaping hole as a loud sound echoes. The subordinate mutters sure with a defeated look, thinking the teacher seems to be in a good mood despite the insult. She thinks to herself that if they cannot rely on the Truth Society, she must think of something else to figure out what they are using the secret passages for. The chief encourages her to think of this as practice, saying the White Wolf won't last long, and mocks what the hypocrites in the Truth Society would say if asked for help. He mimics their stern response about intelligence duties. Then the subordinate smiles and points out that if she can locate those secret spots, their budget for next year will be secured. The chief agrees, noting that the Truth Society is rich and will pay well to keep their mouths shut about certain things. A small chibi character reacts with a sigh, and the chief dismisses the matter, turning to go to the intelligence division. He then asks about the Scarlet Cult's situation. The subordinate reports that since they lost Murphy, the cult is like loose sand with nothing holding them together. Most of their members were zombies controlled by Murphy, and when she died, their activities stopped, with the remaining black mages either disappearing or joining White Wolf. She concludes the Scarlet Cult is no more, prompting the other figure to comment on the elven great sage's power in crushing Murphy. The subordinate praises the chief as one of the strongest among the destructive, but the chief is more impressed by the bookstore owner. He points out that the great sage of the Iris family even calls the bookstore owner Lord, meaning the entire family serves him, a fact known only to a few high-ranking people. The subordinate says that for those who know, their attitude toward the bookstore owner is not just submission, but fear. The chief agrees, saying any smart person would be like that, and they should thank Mr. Lin this time. He explains that without him, they might have waited until Murphy caused more damage before realizing there was a destructive black mage as powerful as Wilda in Nakan. Therefore, it would be foolish not to value Mr. Lin, which is why he submitted the transfer request then, hoping the Elder Council would approve after weighing the risks. The chief believes the elders are not stupid enough to investigate now, and notes the lack of an advanced alert, suggesting the Truth Society is just for show. He muses that their intelligence network would be better used for catching fish, and then dramatically snaps a feather pen in his hand. Two other elders approach the first one, asking what is wrong and what is going on, as the vice president, presumably the one being addressed, looks sternly at the departing subordinate. The vice president forces a smile, saying it's nothing and he just felt annoyed, telling them to get back to work, while a small note wonders if he is thinking about Miss Doris. Another person warns him to stop being nosy or his budget will be cut, while the vice president tells them to do their own work and that he will look later. The subordinate leaves the office, followed by the chief of intelligence looking back at the vice president. The chief clicks something, opening an email notification on a screen. The email is from the Elder Council to Knight Abraham Joseph, stating his transfer request for Candela has been declined. However, they are taking his opinion as key evidence for the assessment of sector number 0113 and have dispatched someone to investigate. The message promises approval if the final assessment aligns with his. Knight Joseph reacts with extreme shock and disbelief as he reads the news. The scene shifts back to the hallway where the vice president sees his subordinates reacting strangely. As the chief of intelligence is walking away, one of the subordinates throws papers in the air in a panic, with text exclaiming exquisite Nakainis. The subordinate who threw the papers looks utterly confused and overwhelmed, while others are scattered. The setting changes to a rainy street where footsteps are heard on the wet pavement. A woman with long white hair, wearing glasses and carrying a book, walks under a red umbrella. She walks purposefully in the rain, her steps echoing. She looks towards a window, stating that this is the mission target for this assessment, number 0113 Class I sector. The story starts in Sector 0113, a Class I area, focusing on a seemingly normal bookstore. This place is important because Radiant Knight Abraham Joseph wrote a file about it himself. This bookstore was deeply involved in the Magic Mirror incident and caused the downfall of the White Wolf and the Scarlet Cult. Joseph even asked for Candela to be transferred because of the owner. This was the first time the Elder Council heard about the bookstore owner, who supposedly wants to save Joseph from his pain, suggesting the owner should get the sword. But the council cannot give away Candela just based on Joseph's word. Secret Instrument Tower still doesn't have enough solid information about this bookstore owner. So after talking it over, the elders decided they needed a full, close assessment and observation of the owner. The goal was to find out the owner's identity, their intentions, their goals, and their real strength. Everyone agreed on this plan. However, since they were assessing a potentially indescribable mutant, they had to be very careful about who they sent for the job. Someone agreed, noting that not many people get the chance to check out a Class I being. That's why Solomon decided to send Lucy Caroline, the Vice Chief of Logistics. Lucy Caroline is a quarter-blood harpy with the skill of mind control, making her naturally good at sensing people's alignment. She might not be the smartest evaluator in the Secret Instrument Tower, but she is definitely the most humble. Now, Lucy is getting ready for her mission, which is to assess the bookstore owner. She is identified as a commissioner and evaluator of the Elder Council. Lucy reminds herself about the mission's goal. No complications allowed. As the tower's representative, she must pretend to be a regular customer to talk to the owner and gather data for the council. Lucy finally sees the legendary bookstore owner, the person at the heart of Nocken's chaos. He looks completely ordinary, without any hint of special power. But Lucy knows looks can fool people. He is a Class I being. She remembers hearing he is terrifying, having somehow overpowered Joseph without Joseph even knowing. To deal with someone like that, Lucy must stay respectful and avoid making him angry. She tells herself to stay calm and follow the plan carefully so everything goes smoothly. Lucy stands outside the door, ready to enter the bookstore for her assessment mission. She pushes the door open, a bell rings, and a voice welcomes her, presenting a single red rose on the counter. Lucy breathes out, relieved as she steps inside. She sees the bookstore owner behind the counter. She thinks, so that's the legendary bookstore owner, the center of the storms in Nokken. He seems very normal, just as expected, but she remembers appearances are tricky and he is a Class I. She recalls the stories about him incapacitating Joseph without being noticed. Lucy resolves to be extremely careful and not provoke him. Lucy gathers her thoughts, determined to follow the plan and proceed cautiously, putting on a big, professional smile. She says a standard hello, but as she does, the owner puts his hand down on the table, showing he noticed her approach instantly. The owner seems slightly taken aback by her smile, blushing a little, but then he quickly snaps out of it. He finds her smile impressive and wonders if she is a new customer. But then he focuses on how perfectly professional her captivating smile is. He notes the perfect angle, expression, and skill in her smile. Even if she is a woman paying attention to these things, the display of mastery feels too natural to be fake. The owner realizes she can make such a professional smile without even trying. This makes him suspect she is a colleague in some way. This means this attractive silver-haired office lady is not just a customer. She is probably here to sell him something or conduct some kind of business. He wonders how he can tolerate that kind of sales pitch. He thinks that standard hello and that smile have already exposed her true intentions. He immediately asks if she is a saleswoman or here for a questionnaire, saying he has seen her type before people who waste time without wanting to buy anything. But he declares, since she dared to show up, he will treat her as a customer, even if she is part of a pyramid scheme. He prepares to use his own conversational skills. The owner tells her he will guess her next line, which will be, "Are you the bookstore owner?" Lucy is shocked, wondering if he read her mind or if it was precognition, as she sensed nothing from him. She questions how he did that and wonders if this is already a warning. She recalls Chief Joseph saying he was friendly. The owner mentally congratulates himself for exposing her so easily, believing that acting like he already saw through her is the key to regaining control of the conversation. He thinks that being imposing and suppressing the opponent by disrupting their rhythm is like taking away half their mental strength. He muses that no matter what conversational skills people have, they won't work if they are nervous, as these skills are just psychological tactics. You need to control their minds. The crucial part is not letting them hesitate, One must be steady, precise, and brutal, pulling them into one's own rhythm by asking direct, focused, or hinted questions. The owner thinks that since she wanted to ask the first question to lead the conversation, her next move after hello must be a question. As a seasoned conversationalist, life teacher, and soul healer, his own skills are already supreme. He refuses to let her lead. He tells her that since she came on her own, she should have expected what she might encounter. He points out that she specifically targeted him, so he knew about her intentions. He judges her as a rookie who thought she could talk her way into anything after a recent small success. He sighs about how arrogant young people are these days. He tells her every move she makes is too superficial and that she isn't hiding her goal at all, advising her to be more careful as a young person. Lucy realizes he knows everything about her mission and that his words were a warning for her being reckless. She feels completely seen through, like her thoughts and soul are toys in his hands. She becomes chilled and apologizes sincerely for causing any inconvenience, begging for forgiveness. She says she only has a few small questions to ask. The owner thinks, it doesn't matter, I should still be able to salvage this. He notes she is still peaceful and likely just wanted to put her in her place. Lucy continues asking for his permission to ask those questions, saying it would mean a lot to Nakan if he answered. The owner finds this interesting, noting her determination. He sees her strategy as taking one step back to take 2 steps forward, likely using a questionnaire to figure out what product to sell or assess a project. He is slightly impressed she brought Nakan into this, showing boldness. He agrees to hear her small questions. Lucy is relieved he has a good temper and isn't evil. She asks the first question, why he set up his shop here. The owner ponders the question, realizing it doesn't make sense for a saleswoman. He decides not to tell her the embarrassing truth about being transmigrated and selling books to survive. Instead, he answers simply that interest and fate brought him there. He notes that for her first question, the purpose of the bookstore owner setting up shop here is because he caught a glimpse of fate and became curious. Next, Lucy asks about the event that happened at the gasworks explosion. The owner wonders if they want to develop the wreckage site. He coughs and says the event was tragic, but some people truly deserve death. He adds that life is precious and shouldn't be thrown away easily. He mentions hearing the tragedy was caused by poor supervision and years of negligence, concluding that some people must answer for it. Lucy says she understands and thanks him for his answer. She prepares to ask the last question, how he feels about what he is currently doing. The owner wonders how that relates to the previous question and if she is just wasting his time. Then he has an idea. He figures out her motive. The first question was about land value, the second about the explosion's impact on people, and the broad last question is about surveying nearby shops affected by the blast. He concludes she and her company plan to evaluate the property value of the area to take over development rights for the ruins, and they are being secretive because they are competing with others. He thinks that since she came here by chance, he can't give her useful data, but promoting his shop wouldn't hurt anyway. Judging by her professionalism, she works for a big company. He considers using this chance to promote his humble shop. He states that he truly enjoys what he is doing, as it is his life's purpose. He explains his purpose, giving suitable books to suitable people so they can overcome confusion and find their own path. He says even though he doesn't make much money, seeing people become lively after being dejected makes him feel great, as he is happy to guide them. He uses her as an example of someone troubled by their work. The owner then turns the tables, saying since she used a lot of his time, he will return the favor and promote his shop. He uses his professional, warm business smile that seems to encourage people to open up. He thinks if he can use it for publicity, great. If not, he can at least turn her into a new customer. He declares the reason he opened the shop is to make people happy, not for money. Lucy is surprised she became his target, but more importantly, she admits she is tired of her job. She explains the logistics division is overloaded due to the recent cult and wolf activity. As vice chief, she feels especially tired because logistics means supporting the front lines, not just with supplies but also making sure there are no loose ends after a battle. She mentions she was temporarily dispatched here at this critical time to provide an evaluation result for the Elder Council. The owner tells her not to be so shocked about the incident she mentioned. He asks if her people plan to take full responsibility for what happened outside. Lucy confirms they have to, otherwise things will get very tricky, even though it means more work for her. The owner notes that her company seems determined and must be demanding a lot from its employees. He figures that as a researcher, she has to go door to door for accurate results. Thinking about that hard work makes his hair want to fall out. He calls her the grief of a corporate slave and tells the poor child she can rest and read some books if she doesn't mind. Lucy is completely stunned by his insight and exclamation. The owner smirks, realizing he got the reaction he wanted, confirming his guess was right. He tells her again not to be shocked. Then he brings up the incident she mentioned, asking if her organization plans to take full responsibility for the outside mess. Lucy confirms they will, saying otherwise things would get very difficult. She adds that even though she is busy, it is still her job. The owner observes that her company is set on this and must be demanding a lot from its employees. He thinks that as a researcher, asking questions door to door for accurate data must be exhausting. He laments the sorrow of a corporate slave and tells her kindly, "Poor child," offering her a rest by reading some books if she wishes. When this person was young, they thought the world looked different to them, like it was just black and white. Later, they found out they had a special power called mind authority, which made them sensitive to good and bad things. Because of this talent, people always kept away from them and treated them badly. People would say mean things because of this ability, calling it disgusting and revolting. Even though the young kid barely knew what good or evil meant, they judged her harshly, wondering how she dared to call others evil when she probably wasn't good herself. So, everyone decided to avoid her completely. However, someone noticed this young girl and thought she was a good specimen because of her talent. This person decided that such a talent was perfect for the secret instrument tower, which would make their family much safer. Then, this person grabbed the terrified young girl, mentioning she had the blood of a harpy. The person asked if she knew what an eagle does when its children need to leave the nest. They explained that eagles push their children off cliffs so that the useless chicks fall to their death. This was used as a lesson. She had to be useful to survive. The person called this true justice and asked if she agreed that people should always do the right thing. The girl, scared and crying, weakly agreed to this. The person told her she could go now and to pack her things, saying someone would pick her up later. But there was one last thing. From now on, she had to stay away from this person, who was the family head. After this, she formally joined the secret instrument tower and was sent to the busy logistics department by the family head's orders. Using her talent, she finished many dangerous missions, and her rank in the tower slowly went up. But nobody ever felt happy for her successes or tried to comfort her. They just stayed far away because of her talent. This made her realize that the secret instrument tower only cared about her useful talent, not about her as a person. She felt like no one ever cared for her, and maybe no one ever would, leading her to wonder about the point of her existence. Suddenly, the story jumps to the present, where Vice Chief Caroline receives a new mission from the Elder Council. The mission is to go to Sector 0113 Class I and carefully check out the bookstore owner to figure out who they are, what they want, and how strong they are. Caroline thought to herself that they only gave her such important and dangerous tasks because they knew she was capable, even though she found it very troublesome. The person on the screen told her to fill out the 0113 file with as much data as possible for the Elder Council. Caroline sadly accepted, saying she was used to this treatment and deserved it, as long as she could finish the job. She noted that Sector 0113 had an indescribable mutant with very little information, so she needed to prepare everything before making contact. Caroline spent time compiling all the reports into the final Sector 0113 file, starting by looking at the big picture. She reviewed the original reports from Sir Joseph, along with messages from other customers and speculations from different departments in the secret instrument tower. By summarizing all this, Caroline believed she could figure out the logic behind the strange mutant. She concluded 3 main points. First, the owner acts like a normal bookstore owner, offering borrowing, purchasing, and browsing. If people don't have bad intentions, skepticism, or disrespect, he won't act aggressively, which is why Joseph was only temporarily stopped. Secondly, based on what the Vice President of the Truth Society and Sage Doris said, the owner is almost all-knowing and all-powerful, so hiding thoughts is useless. Lastly, all the books are in a strange language and have special powers, carefully chosen by the owner to solve immediate problems selflessly. The price asked seems small compared to the value of the books, suggesting it was just for the owner's role-playing fun. If the owner tells someone to sit down and read some books, it means they are completely under his control. There wasn't much info on the books, which made them the main focus of the investigation, and Caroline felt she needed to record at least one book's power for the council. She admitted she was excited by the mystery, but also felt a strange fear, like everything was an illusion and her soul was being pulled by a higher being. Suddenly, she blurted out a question asking if she could look at the books herself, immediately regretting it out loud. She panicked, worrying that if the bookstore owner was about to recommend a book, asking to choose one herself would be an insult. Meanwhile, the bookstore owner smiled, feeling successful because with just a few words, he turned a market researcher with no buying intent into a potential customer. He thought he was awesome and didn't need to say much more, believing he saw in her eyes that she enjoyed reading. The owner knew that people who love books and knowledge can't resist the chance to choose for themselves rather than just being recommended something. He thought to himself that it was a legitimate business, as he never forced anyone to buy, just convinced them with his persuasive words. He also felt it was nice to let her relax and pick her own books, especially since it was raining hard outside, making him happy to offer a place to rest. He mused that if she wanted to relax, he could recommend some light reading, like prose or short stories. The bookstore owner gave her permission to browse wherever she wanted, saying you can't rush an evaluation anyway. Also hinted that part of her job was to chat and browse books with him, suggesting she could take her time. He hoped that once she relaxed, she might buy a few books, thinking that as a colleague, she wouldn't miss his hint. Caroline realized the owner knew she was there to assess him, yet he was being so kind and easygoing, even accepting her sudden request. She thought he was very friendly, even possessing such amazing power, and understood why Sir Joseph transferred Candela to him. Caroline mentally wrapped up her basic evaluation and decided she just needed to pick a book to complete the final part. The bookstore owner mentioned the storefront was too small for many books and offered her access to the stockpile in the back if she had more time. Caroline was shocked, realizing no one had ever mentioned this back room, meaning she was being shown completely new, uncharted territory. She wondered if there was a meaning behind the special treatment and felt she had no choice but to follow his wishes, thanking him and accepting the offer. As she stepped forward, she exclaimed in shock, calling the area a grander library than any in Asura. She realized this space was much larger than the outside suggested, likely using large-scale space warping magic. This made her wonder if the bookstore contained all the books and wisdom of the entire world, containing taboo knowledge that could destroy Nakan if spread publicly. She quickly told herself not to overthink it, as her mind couldn't handle it, and decided to grab a less dangerous-looking book and leave quickly. Caroline felt that the longer she stayed, the more her sanity might suffer. Just looking at the names of the books made her heart race, and she realized even recording the names drained her willpower. She decided there was no other way but to ask the bookstore owner to recommend a suitable book. She noticed a row of books titled Soul Gazing and wondered if it related to investigation, which was a vital skill for her job, identifying and evaluating danger levels. She wondered if she should pick that book, feeling as if someone was whispering in her ear that she could only choose that one book. As she reached out, she felt a strange pull and saw glowing red eyes in a book cover. A giant red moon appeared, and she was overwhelmed as a dark shadow figure made a hand sign with glowing eyes. Caroline was terrified, seeing dark silhouettes in the red mist and feeling hands on her chest. Her eyes rolled back, blood streaming from them, as she was clearly overwhelmed by the power in a book. A black entity with glowing eyes seemed to loom over her, and a close-up showed her eye cracking with a burst of purple light and blood. The page she touched cracked, and a dark entity with glowing red eyes appeared below her, while she let out a scream. She found herself suddenly back in the blue-lit area, looking up and realizing she had somehow returned, wondering if it was just a moment ago. She remembered the terrifying vision, asking herself if those were souls in the book. Below her, a glowing book with skulls on it was open, emitting a powerful, roaring red light. Caroline shrieked in fear as the book seemed to come alive with menacing red eyes. She screamed and then seemed to be thrown back violently onto the blue wooden floor. She gasped, wondering if she was back, and realizing it felt like only a moment had passed since she entered the back room. She wondered about the terrifying experience, asking if those were really souls in the book she touched. Book seemed to roar, showing a terrifying red scene with more shadows, as Caroline felt intense pain and blood pouring from her eyes. She was clearly being attacked or overwhelmed, with black tendrils wrapping around her body as she screamed in agony. Her eye was shown again, cracked and bleeding, as the overwhelming red environment suggested a complete loss of control or sensory overload. She felt immense pressure, finally screaming out loud before being thrown back. She landed hard with a thud, immediately checking if she was back where she started. Confused, she wondered if it had only been a moment, then she recalled the vision of the book and the red moon. She questioned if what she saw were the souls trapped within the book, looking at a glowing, terrifying magical script that looked like skulls and a roaring mouth. A loud roar came from the book as Caroline cried out in fright. She looked down at herself, realizing she was back, and thought she needed to get out of there and find the bookstore owner. She staggered out, looking back at the book that was now closed, leaving behind the intense red aftermath for the blue library. The final image showed a flash of action and a news screen saying to live. The story begins with the credits and title page for this chapter of I'm Really Not the Evil God's Lackey. The chapter title is prominently displayed, showing the series name again. More credits are shown for the creators of the work, including the original author and artists. Outside, it is raining heavily, and a figure standing by a door feels that the outcome has not been bad at all. The person holding a cup thinks that this is the first time a customer has asked to see his secret collection, and he imagines her happy face. He explains to himself that this secret collection is the manifestation of his wish containing all the knowledge in the world, which is like heaven for a book lover. He is sure the customer must be satisfied, and we see a close-up of an eye and a woman's shoes stepping down. The female customer, panting slightly, asks if she can take this book, and the bookstore owner, holding a cup, looks surprised yet composed. The owner places a thick book labeled to live on the table in front of the customer. The customer looks at the book, acknowledging it's a great but heavy read, not suitable for relaxing, which makes the owner internally chuckle. The owner notices her reaction and thinks, I knew it, as the customer looks distressed. The customer, feeling overwhelmed and tired, clutches her head, while the owner notes she is much more tired than before. The owner leans in to check on her, sighing gently, and asks how she is feeling, mentioning that some people feel uncomfortable at first with such books. The customer, covering her eyes, admits the souls she saw made her uneasy and that she needs time. She apologizes for needing time, while the owner internally praises her empathy for calling the book's characters souls. The owner smiles, thinking she really dove into the book, and then suggests she take a break to chat. He reflects that for such a strong-looking, mature office lady, she must have a delicate mind and high empathy, or perhaps she sees herself in the plot, probably both. Because of this, he decides to offer some after-sales service, mentioning soul-healing words to help customers come out of their daze. The mature office lady looks slightly shaken, confirming the owner's observation that both scenarios might be true. He clears his throat, preparing his words, while the customer is slightly shocked by his sudden shift in demeanor. He offers his soul-healing words and then focuses, ready to speak. The owner tells her it's normal to be shaken by the book at first contact, but she will learn a lot once she gets used to it. She asks if he approves of her choice, thinking to herself about his comment, it's normal to be shaken in my condition. She realizes he is right, thinking the strain comes from her weakness in controlling the book's power and her inability to fully accept the reality within it. The owner stands up and assures her it's fine, emphasizing that empathy is natural and life is tough for everyone. He continues that since they live in human society, wanting humanity around is natural, even though the universe is a cruel, uncaring void. She reflects on his words, noting that her empathy seems to have gone beyond a normal human's, reaching a deity's height. She then recalls the phrase God loves all and wonders if he is indescribable, which explains why even the elven great sage serves him. She reasons it's not just power, but also his bottomless and indiscriminate compassion, unlike past indescribables who were selfish beings. She concludes that this bookstore owner is even closer to that description, leading her to question if this is why he does all of this. The owner lightly misinterprets her question, thinking she means his efforts to help customers, and admits he feels compelled to save them from suffering because it would be too cruel not to. He adds, a bit sheepishly, that it would also be better if it saved his wallet, insisting his caring nature is just how he is and she doesn't need to see it as selfless. She focuses on his last words, as long as you have the heart, you can do the same, wondering if there's a hidden meaning behind that suggestion. She wonders if he likes her ability and if he wants her to help his plans within the secret instrument tower to change Nokian's status quo. She pieces together that his earlier intimidation followed by treating her as a customer and letting her see his wisdom was all part of a conspiracy. Now it is her time to decide, feeling that she never had a chance to resist, and this situation brings back unpleasant memories. She asks him if he thinks she is suitable for whatever he has planned, looking troubled. The owner finds her question about suitability nice, noting that asking questions means she has ideas, but asking if she can instead of how she can implies she is still subconsciously denying her own opinion. He realizes she wants others to validate her actions, which is normal for a colleague, but he must find her exact reason with his words. He states clearly that it is not about suitability, but about how she thinks of herself, asking if she considered what generates the self-doubt. He explains the underlying cause is the nature of her work, as she constantly faces human suffering, making pity natural, which is an admirable virtue. He warns that compassion helps others but not oneself, and the stronger and more empathetic she is, the harder it hits her, leading to her current trouble and doubt about her importance. She realizes the bookstore owner has seen completely through her, understanding that her talent, while helping her finish work, is also a shackle. The owner observes that she has mistaken her life's purpose for her job because her abilities were validated, a common issue for corporate slaves. He notes this is different from someone like Ackerman, where changing the environment is useless. The key is making her realize her own worth. He stresses that picking the book only means something if she understands its deeper meaning. She asks about the deeper meaning, and the owner begins to recount witnessing the revival of a glorious ancient civilization. He describes how they endured hardships to develop their land, having only one place to call home and never resting. He reveals that the book in her hands is a small feather from that great civilization. He states the civilization's most significant trait was tenacity, which came from every soul's courage and will to live. He tells her that this tenacity is precisely what she needs right now, making her realize the souls in the book were real, or at least once were. She is amazed that he refined billions of souls into a book, an inconceivable power, and that he witnessed an entire civilization's development, but tells herself not to overthink it. She concludes that since he is giving her such a book, her current situation isn't as bad as she thought, and the book can help her. The owner is pleased she understood so quickly, saying one doesn't need to be blunt with a clever person. He confirms the book is ideal for her current state, stating that if she understands it, it will replace everything she currently lacks. He explains that when people hit rock bottom and rely only on themselves, they hold on to their bottom line to overcome life's tests. He corrects her understanding, saying the most vital thing isn't her ability, but channeling everything outside her soul to experience more and gradually build her life. He advises letting her mind slowly return to peace so she can face her inner soul directly and truly make peace with herself. He concludes that once this happens, she can thank herself for coming into this world and be proud of herself, believing to live is about just that. The owner is momentarily confused, wondering how his cheap soul-healing words made her cry. He checks if she is alright, telling her not to force acceptance, but she replies that she is fine and the book is exceptional, thanking him for his guidance. She assures him she will get used to it soon, and he agrees, noting that she understands what she's going through, which is good. She confirms this, promising to do her best to understand and utilize the book, declaring, "From now on my entire being is yours. It won't disappoint you." The scene shifts to a chibi-style reaction where others are brainstorming, but the main character gives up quickly. The owner tells her not to be so sure and to think hard about it, promising her life will change entirely, and then tells her to come back soon as she leaves in the rain. Outside in the rain, the woman sends a message on her phone. She takes off her glasses, and her eyes flare up with intense power, emitting a purple aura. She recognizes this as the power of soul gazing, which can peer into the soul and find information accurately. She realizes that by using her own soul to gaze into others, she can get more detailed information if she strengthens her soul. She recalls that in the past, she only used her talent to finish tasks, but Mr. Lin taught her to use this ability like him. She feels humbled by such an expectation, declaring it her greatest honor to be Mr. Lin's eyes. However, she remembers the awful feeling of her eyes being gouged out by countless sticky hands and says she never wants to experience that again. She recalls a childhood memory where someone told her eagles are pushed off cliffs and the weak get crushed. She looks at a massive bird soaring in the sky, thinking that's not the truth. She focuses on the bird's eye as it flies up towards the bright sky and clouds. She concludes that no matter how strong or weak one is, as long as they are alive, the moment they spread their wings, they will be reborn. The narration starts by guiding the mind to become calm, showing a dark, shadowy figure in bright blue water. View shifts to the back of a person with long white hair, standing calmly in the shimmering water. Inside the mind space, a dark figure speaks about casting out all stubborn distractions once the mind is quiet. The bright light shows the intense moment of this mental clarity, revealing the wide-eyed face of the white-haired woman. She is told that when the mind is clear, one can face their inner soul directly. The lesson continues, stating that only then can a person truly make peace with themselves. The scene shows the woman in a suit standing over her younger self, a girl in a blue dress hugging the toy bird, both standing on the water's surface. The younger version of the woman looks up, tears starting to show in her purple eyes. The adult woman looks intently to the side as the intense spiritual energy pulses around them. A foot steps into the water, causing ripples as the voice continues. When that happens, the tall woman stands over the smaller, crying girl, her presence towering over her. A close-up on the woman's eyes shows the lingering tears and shock on the younger girl's face as the adult woman kneels down. The adult woman gently holds the younger girl's chin, then says that one can tell themselves something important. The two figures embrace deeply in the middle of the bright blue, watery landscape. The adult woman smiles softly while wiping a tear from the younger girl's face, showing deep compassion. Words of affirmation come through, "You've been doing your best," which makes the younger girl's eyes widen in surprise and emotion. The words continue with a profound statement, "Thank you for coming to this world," causing the younger girl to burst into tears. The hug breaks, and the sound of cracking is heard as the blue water around them starts to shatter like ice. A voice proclaims, "You deserve to be proud of yourself," as large shards of blue crystal break apart beneath them. The crystal shatters completely into brilliant light, showing the woman with glasses in the background. A close-up on the woman's face, now wearing glasses, shows her determined expression amidst the light. Her attire is professional, a white shirt under a dark suit jacket. As she speaks again, she explains her philosophy, "I think to live is about just that," and then someone else reacts with surprise. The man who was observing is shocked, exclaiming, "Huh, how did I make her cry?" The man wonders if the girl is lacking in feeling, crying over simple healing words, and then asks if she is alright. He also warns her not to force acceptance. The woman responds that it is alright and she is fine, as a warm, golden light begins to surround her. She declares that the book is exceptional, wiping her tears away with a genuine smile. She thanks the man for his guidance and promises to get used to things soon, while the man smiles and asks if she understands what to do next. She looks up with determination, her purple eyes shining, affirming that she will do her best to understand and utilize the book. Beaming with joy and confidence, she pledges her allegiance to him. She makes a solemn promise, "From now on, my entire being is yours. I won't disappoint you." But the man's expression changes to a puzzled hum. The scene shifts to his small, chibi-style vampire character looking shocked and confused, as two other shadow-like figures react nearby. Another chibi figure, perhaps the main character, sits looking smugly as the brainstorming section concludes. The smug chibi figure warns someone not to be so sure. The scene changes to hands holding a book, with words suggesting deep contemplation on the book's contents and a promise that life will change entirely. The surroundings show a dark, rainy city street as someone is told to come back soon. The woman with white hair walks away in the pouring rain, holding a red and black umbrella, looking up at the tall buildings. She checks her device, confirming message sent. While the rain continues to fall, she removes her red-framed glasses, preparing for something. Her eyes suddenly snap open wide with incredible intensity, shown with radiating lines of light. A powerful surge of energy, depicted in bright magenta and purple, erupts around her as she moves swiftly. She is seen small under her umbrella against the backdrop of this massive, vibrant energy explosion engulfing the city's structures. As the energy fades slightly, she thinks, "So this is the power of soul-gazing?" She reflects that soul-gazing can look into the soul and find information accurately, and using her own soul allows for more detail. She muses that she can get more detailed information if her soul strengthens, recalling that in the past, she only used her talent for tasks. However, Mr. Lin taught her that he wants her to use this ability for bigger things, like him. While she stands with a large raven nearby, she expresses how humbled she is by his expectation, with her eyes glowing with renewed purpose. She proudly declares it is her greatest honor to be Mr. Lin's eyes, but then remembers a painful past feeling. She recalls the awful feeling of her eyes being gouged by sticky hands, making her revert to a crying chibi form under her umbrella, vowing never to experience it again. Her expression hardens with resolve as she remembers what someone told her when she was little. She recalls the saying that eagles are pushed off cliffs and the weak are crushed, but she states that this is not the whole truth, as a large eagle flies in the rainy sky. A close-up focuses intensely on the eagle's fierce, golden eye. Scene shifts to a bright blue sky above the clouds, where a dark silhouette, looking like a bird, rises up from a mountain peak. The narration emphasizes that no matter how strong or weak someone is, the critical moment comes when they spread their wings. The dark silhouette of the soaring bird is silhouetted against a blinding burst of white-blue light from the sun. The chapter concludes with a powerful realization: they'll be reborn. As massive white clouds billow around the soaring figure, the assessment report on the bookstore owner was finished. A woman with long white hair stood there, holding a folder after the man finished his statement. She announced that the Elder Council admitted their mistake. The woman smiled brightly while holding the document. She confirmed that they formally approved the transfer request. The man with gray hair grunted, feeling like it was too much trouble, but looking satisfied. He then said it was good that those old, stubborn people finally understood the truth. things moving like this, the secret instruments tower needed to face reality, and cooperating with Mr. Lin was the only way to keep peace in Nakan. The woman thought only someone like the man could convince others with such words. He then mentioned that he hadn't seen anyone in the secret instrument tower as pure white as the man himself. He tried to show off his radiant night outfit, suggesting others looked similar, but the man looked taken aback. The man quickly dismissed the outfit comment and said the Elder Council should now officially restore the woman's rank as a radiant knight. He was sure she would soon be the role model for all the knights again. The man then wanted the approved transfer request documents first, as he had more reports for the Elder Council later before leaving. The woman, looking calm, asked the man how he felt after getting his help, implying a new perspective. The man's mechanical hand was shown as the woman asked if it was obvious. He stood silently, ready to go. The woman then wished him good luck with his work as she smiled. After the woman left, the man held the document and asked how the feeling was. He then asked the woman if she felt like a new person after receiving help. The woman's face was shown closely as she seemed to agree. She replied with a big smile that it was obvious. The woman looked extremely happy, glowing with positive energy. She proudly declared that he had granted her a new life. The man smiled back at her happy response. He simply agreed, saying of course. The first man walked away and the second man, Claude, appeared in the hallway making a slight sound. The first man, Joseph, looked somewhat serious as he walked. Claude, the student, appeared and told his teacher he finished his work there. He urged Joseph to do whatever he wanted now. Claude told Joseph to hurry up. Claude, peeking out, was clearly excited to see his teacher. Claude finally greeted his teacher, Joseph, after waiting for him to finish talking. Claude then mentioned that the cultivation division needed Joseph to sign an important document. He explained he waited because he saw Joseph was busy discussing work. Joseph seemed amused by Claude's sudden appearance and excitement. Joseph looked down at Claude, who seemed flushed. Joseph playfully called Claude his crafty student and questioned why Claude would think he didn't know what he was thinking. Joseph asserted that if there was a really important document, Claude would have called him immediately on his communicator. Joseph then playfully cornered Claude, asking him to admit if he was just curious about the change in the vice chief of logistics, Caroline. Claude sheepishly admitted that he was curious. Claude started talking about how, in the past, Knight Caroline was always distant and serious. Claude pointed out that now, she was like a new person, and the other two women nearby seemed happy about it too. He mentioned that people would feel at ease around her now, something he hadn't felt in the secret instrument tower for a long time. Claude remembered the last time the atmosphere was this good was when Great Knight Daria was around, which made Claude immediately apologize when he brought her up. The sight of Daria made Claude panic and he quickly apologized to his teacher, saying he didn't mean to bring her up. Joseph placed his robotic hand on Claude's head, seemingly to reassure him. Claude looked very scared that he upset his teacher by mentioning Daria. Joseph didn't seem mad, just thoughtful for a moment. Joseph let go of Claude's head with a slight movement of his metallic hand. Joseph told Claude there was no need to worry so much and to hurry up and give him the document. Joseph teased Claude, asking if he was wasting time on his dear teacher. Joseph warned Claude that if he delayed any longer, he would lose his chance to confess his feelings to someone. Joseph then teased Claude again, saying he wasn't good enough at this stuff to waste time with his teacher. Joseph strongly advised Claude that if he dallied, he would lose his chance to confess. Joseph affectionately called Claude his pure, foolish pupil. Claude was utterly shocked by his teacher's words and reaction. Claude's face showed extreme shock and embarrassment. Claude was overwhelmed with panic. Claude stuttered out a panicked denial to his teacher, saying he didn't think anything like that. Claude became extremely flustered, thinking how embarrassing it would be to say something so direct, suggesting he should start by just being friends. Joseph gently patted Claude's shoulder and told him that whoever he wanted to confess to, he must remember to say it at all. Joseph's face showed a slight grimace as he continued. Joseph then explained that sometimes, if you don't say things properly, you will regret it for your whole life, showing an image of a smiling woman, perhaps Daria. Joseph's eyes were intense as he looked at Claude. He emphasized that if Claude doesn't say it right, he will regret it for the rest of his life, while Claude looked nervous. Claude called out teacher and Joseph instructed him to do his best, threatening to transfer him to the logistics department if he failed, and to remember that warning well. Joseph walked away, humming happily, while Claude was left stunned. Claude cried out in disbelief, "Teacher?" Claude stood alone in silence, contemplating his situation. He sighed, realizing that his teacher was actually doing this for his own good. He remembered he was too embarrassed to approach Caroline earlier, and now he needed to take this once-in-a-lifetime chance. Claude slapped his own face, rallying himself to be brave and go talk to Caroline. He resolved to stake the reputation of Radiant Knight Joseph on speaking to her, but decided he couldn't confess immediately as it would be too improper for a first meeting. Claude reasoned that even his teacher wouldn't be heartless enough to transfer him to logistics, but he still needed to act naturally and build some rapport first. He decided to act normally, even if it was just small talk. He determined he must not show his inner thoughts while talking. Claude squeaked as he finally moved forward. He took a deep breath and then nervously addressed Vice Chief Caroline. Caroline turned around, looking composed, with her purple eyes fixed on him. Caroline's eyes widened slightly as she noticed Claude. Claude, trembling, introduced himself as Claude, the pupil of Radiant Knight Joseph. He asked if she had time, explaining he wanted to double-check the damage report from the White Wolf and the Scarlet Cult. He nervously finished by asking if she had time. Inside Claude's head, there was an explosion of positive, romantic thoughts about Caroline being beautiful, kind, and wanting to be with her. His internal monologue was full of confessions and excitement, overwhelming Caroline too, who started blushing intensely. Caroline's eyes went wide and she started to flush deeply. Her body language showed she was completely overwhelmed. Caroline nervously cleared her throat and asked if Claude, her student, was asking for something. Trying to regain composure, Caroline told Claude she had already finalized the damage report. She then asked him to come to her office if he didn't mind. Claude was ecstatic, exclaiming, "Really? That's great!" Claude was so happy that a little floating version of him was celebrating. He cheered that he managed to talk to her, and did it without exposing his frantic thoughts, meaning it was all quite natural. He thought to himself how awesome he was. The scene shifted to a dark room with a bright doorway where Joseph stood. A close-up on Joseph's feet showed him standing firmly. The focus shifted to an ornate sword displayed against a dark backdrop. Joseph stood with his back to the viewer, looking toward the sword, showing his powerful build and one robotic arm. A closer look at his lower body showed his stance. The light from the doorway illuminated his boots. Joseph was shown rubbing his metallic arm, looking tense. He softly uttered the name Daria with a serious expression. A voice called out Joseph Tilda from somewhere else. Joseph, swaying slightly, was shown shirtless in what looked like a gym or training area. A detailed look at his muscular physique emphasized his hard work. Text boxes identified the man as Joseph Abraham Young, a Radiant Knight, and the speaker as Daria Abraham, Radiant Knight Joseph's wife. Daria, looking cheerful and winking, told Joseph she needed to go on a new mission soon and would leave dinner for him. Daria asked Joseph where Melissa was, implying Melissa was supposed to be with him. The view focused on Daria's athletic wear as the identification box for her appeared. Joseph wiped sweat from his brow, looking slightly concerned or busy. Joseph explained that he just taught someone how to use a sword, and that person was already asleep in her room. The focus shifted to a young girl in bed, seemingly asleep, mumbling about sword forms. The girl, clutching a bunny toy, complained softly that she couldn't memorize the moves because they were too hard. Joseph's wife, Daria, tells him that while training Melissa is important, he shouldn't be too strict because she is still young and needs breaks. Daria mentions that Melissa complained about her mother's training being too harsh, as her mother wanted her to become a real knight quickly, suggesting Melissa dislikes her mother's ways. Joseph then says they haven't trained together in a while and he should reinforce Melissa's learning a bit, right when Melissa, sleeping in bed, gets startled by the thought of more training. Joseph smugly states that Melissa still needs more training and boasts about when he was her age, but Daria quickly covers his mouth, telling him bragging time is over. Daria winks and teases Joseph, saying there is no need for him to boast about being the most powerful Radiant Knight of all time, then adds that it's too bad he cannot even cook. Joseph defensively claims he technically can cook, but people avoid his food, and he worries about what would happen if he could cook, asking if he would have to cook for other men when their daughter gets married, to which Daria said, "I don't want it." Daria tells Joseph not to worry about their daughter's future wedding because she is just a kid and she is there to handle things, but then she remembers and brings up his mission. Suddenly, Joseph is in pain, and Daria quickly asks if he is alright and if the curse is back again, showing concern for him. Joseph admits the curse is getting more frequent lately and tells Daria to save it and just let him lie down on the sofa because of the bloody curse. Daria immediately offers to get him hot water and a massage. Joseph agrees to the massage with an and Daria prepares a basin of hot water for him. Daria tends to Joseph's feet in the warm water, and he groans contentedly while she asks if he is feeling better under the bright chandelier light. Joseph says he feels much better, and Daria thanks him for saying she is getting better at giving messiahs, but she reminds him that not even he can suppress the curse of Candela, which has buried many radiant nights. Daria warns Joseph not to think about it, as finding a successor for his sword is not easy if the corruption advances too much, but Joseph cuts her off, saying he is willing to accept the curse if it means he can save more lives. Daria looks worriedly at Joseph as she tells him he will die if this continues, but Joseph firmly states he does not fear death. Joseph explains his only fear is not being able to do anything but watch crimes happen, emphasizing that as a radiant knight, he must keep justice in his heart, quoting the saying that with great power comes great responsibility. Joseph says he has no other choice right now, but he tells Daria that if a day comes when she can resolve this curse, he hopes she will make the right choice. Joseph expresses his hope that if he can be a role model of justice and take care of both Daria and Melissa, she will choose wisely, whether it is righteous or not. And then a concerned Daria touches his face. Daria looks deeply into Joseph's eyes, telling him that she sincerely hopes her beloved won't have to shoulder so much and that he can live for himself, not for others. Joseph clutches his hand tightly, saying it doesn't matter how much he has to bear because he has Daria by his side, adding that a simple curse won't stop him. Joseph, looking resolute, then says he is tired and needs to rest, which seems to surprise Daria. Daria reacts to his sudden shift, finding his declaration both foxy and embarrassing, calling him a damn great knight as Joseph gives a small smile. Joseph leans in and softly touches Daria's forehead, asking if she has a fever, making her flustered. Daria yells at Joseph for sneak attacking her after saying something so embarrassing and asks why he won't give her a break, calling him a useless idiot aside from being strong and cute. Joseph complains that it hurts when she hits him, but Daria insists she cannot be the only one embarrassed and demands he say he loves her right then and there. Joseph gets extremely flustered and asks what she is talking about, saying he could never say something so embarrassing. Daria looks tearful but determined, and Joseph, after a panicked moment, finally agrees to say it properly once he returns from his mission. Daria becomes ecstatic, demanding no tricks, reminding him he promised before they married and accepts his word this time, saying she will go on her mission. Daria reminds him not to go back on his word, and Joseph agrees, saying he won't forget, as she swiftly turns and leaves, telling him to come back soon. Joseph looks down, thinking that if he had stayed with Daria that day all these years, things might have turned out differently, but he resolves that this time, he will decide for himself. The scene shifts to a rainy night outside a building, and then to the bookstore owner sitting at his desk, handling paperwork and wondering when old Wilda will borrow another book after returning one. The owner flips through customer cards, noting that old Wilda returned 100 years of solitude and rituals and followers, but he still worries if Wilda has sorted out his issue with Charles. He then checks on Jae-jitsu, thinking it's almost time for her to return her 2 books, but he isn't worried she won't return them, as even if she doesn't, she will pay the money back. Next, he thinks about Melissa, calling her an unruly child and wondering how much of the 5 years 3 years thing she went through, hoping she improves, especially stopping her habit of arm wrestling strangers. The owner believes Melissa needs to understand that knowledge is the real power and that if a book is overdue, they should check if the problem is with the book or the borrower. He thinks that collecting overdue fees is like an outdoor activity, but he is sad that he hasn't had any irresponsible borrowers recently. Instead, good customers like old Wilda and Doris bring him souvenirs. He states that if someone is having difficulties, he is happy to help, but they must return their books, sighing that maintaining a bookstore is not easy. The owner recalls Joseph is a retired soldier, so he isn't worried about him, noting he even offered to let Mr. Lin deal with Joseph's troubles using psychological coaching. Though Joseph didn't agree then, the owner feels he planted a seed to make Joseph a regular customer, mentioning Joseph seemed fond of the little prince. If that fails, there is still Melissa, who the owner finds easy to convince, stating that leading the parents with their children is an effective marketing technique because kids are not shy about spending money. The owner stretches after thinking, feeling bored, and muses that it has been 3 days since that sexy, silver-haired office lady borrowed a book, contrasting it with the past when he sometimes had no customers for months. He sighs, admitting he feels lonely without someone to chat with, when suddenly a figure rushes in, announcing it is time for Joseph to return his book. Joseph apologizes for the delay, saying he was busy with trivial matters and couldn't find the time until now, to which the bookstore owner replies that it looks like he's been waiting for him for a while. Joseph replies it wasn't that long, but he admits he was thinking about when everyone would return their books and the overdue charges they would face. The owner then asks Joseph if he has decided about what they discussed last time, and Joseph replies that he has. The scene shows a close-up of the ornate sword, followed by Joseph looking determined as he stands ready. Joseph firmly declares, "This is my decision," as he places his hand near the sword. Finally, Joseph states his decision, and below, small chibi versions of various characters are shown. Joseph made a firm statement about his decision, leaving the bookstore owner confused about what decision he was referring to. The bookstore owner smiled, wondering if Joseph was about to offer him some expensive souvenir, similar to someone else before. Joseph returned the book, thanking the owner and saying he learned a lot, calling it a brilliant fairy tale. The owner agreed that The Little Prince was excellent, noting Joseph seemed happy and that the book had really helped ease his pain. Joseph confirmed that the book had eased his pain considerably and he felt very relaxed, expressing his utmost gratitude. Because of this relief, Joseph declared he had made up his mind, which immediately caught the owner's attention. The owner asked what the decision was, reminding Joseph that he had offered to take his heart's troubles, but was now confused by the sight of a very expensive-looking sword. The owner looked closely at the sword, realizing it was splendid and clearly well-made, even for a regular person to see. He figured it must be a ceremonial sword, not something used for normal battles, and then thought about Joseph's daughter, Melissa. Observing Melissa's image and manners, the owner deduced that Joseph might belong to a military aristocracy and the sword represented his past honor and duties. This explained Joseph's strong sense of justice, which would make sense if he was taught these things from a young age. The fact that Joseph was giving him the sword meant he wanted to leave all his burdens behind. The owner asked Joseph if he was sure about giving away a sword that seemed passed down through generations, suggesting he reconsider. Joseph insisted he was sure because even though his spirit was willing, his body could no longer carry the weight and he had no one else to pass it to. He felt he should let things go, as the sword was too heavy for him now, and accepting it would put the owner in great debt to him. The owner mentally noted that this looked like another declining noble house, especially since Asura was currently at peace, and even other noble houses were struggling. He suspected Joseph must have found a new way to survive, which is why he seemed so confident, even while gifting something so valuable. The owner accepted the gift, feeling a bit ashamed after the father-daughter interaction he had witnessed earlier, knowing the sword was precious but a genuine show of gratitude. The owner politely told Joseph there was no need to be so courteous, as he always enjoyed helping his customers, and it made him feel great. Picking up the sword, the owner was surprised it was much lighter than expected, confirming it was likely ceremonial and a truly noble handicraft. He admired the intricate design and lightness, deciding this kind of craftsmanship deserved his time and attention. Joseph was inwardly shocked, watching the owner easily handle such a heavy sword without using any ether, something even he couldn't do. Joseph realized all the sword's materials came from the dream world, making him wonder if the owner's power was connected to it. The owner called the sword pretty and elegant, noting the great attention paid to its design, and thought that a man's love for weapons comes from fighting instinct. He thanked Joseph again and asked if he could pull the blade out for a closer look. Joseph realized the owner had already noticed something, as the main curse of Candela was concentrated on the blade. Joseph explained that Elven King Candela, driven mad by plague, used this very sword to kill himself, trapping his soul inside the blade. He recalled ancient texts describing Candela as a legendary king who could rival gods, commanding respect and fighting against a dark god. Despite his failure, Candela's lingering power was still very strong, and the maddening curse from his anger and soul would infect anyone who touched the blade, even the trained Radiant Knights. Joseph mentioned that the secret instrument tower designed the hilt to suppress the curse, but unsheathing it would affect the wielder first, driving them mad if their willpower was weak. However, he noted that this time the person touching it was the bookstore owner, and though he permitted the look, he warned him to be careful. The owner agreed to be careful, thinking to himself that he knew he wasn't wrong about the owner being considerate. He pulled the blade out, noticing it was like flowing white fire, shining across the whole bookstore, and described it as thin, razor-sharp, and beaming a mesmerizing light. The owner gasped, seeing the evil forces gushing out like venom, recognizing it as the true curse of Candela, with the first target being the wielder, the bookstore owner. The owner noticed an inscription on the blade in an ancient, unknown language lost to Asura, seeing it as a rare opportunity to study. He steadied himself to look closer, but Joseph noticed this was bad as the owner hadn't acted, and the evil forces were about to bind him. Joseph hesitated on whether to intervene, thinking the owner must have a plan, but was extremely frantic, feeling more gripped than during his most dangerous battles. He never expected to see an illusion of a battle between gods in this tiny bookstore and wondered what the owner was planning. At that moment, Joseph truly felt he saw an unfathomable, taboo being, and though he couldn't grasp the creeping mass in the dark, his instinct screamed danger. Joseph was terrified by what he saw, where the supposedly greedy evil forces were in a state of terror, panic, and dying. He felt it was like a prey caught by a serial killer in a horror movie, sensing their desire to live right before they were killed. He could almost hear their silent cries and screams through the ether from that tragedy, and strangely felt sorry for those forces. Then the owner noticed the lower part of the blade seemed to have darkened, feeling a bit dirty, and decided he might as well swing it since he had nothing to wipe it with. As he swung it, the blade became even brighter, as if someone added a special effect of piercing light, making him wonder if it wasn't dirt, but just special craftsmanship. The owner commented to Joseph that his sword was very interesting, claiming what he thought was dirt was actually part of the design. Joseph was stunned, realizing the curse that troubled the secret instrument tower for so long and killed many radiant knights was suddenly gone, just like that. He couldn't believe the bookstore owner mockingly said that dirty curse was part of the design, wondering if the sword was just a toy to him. The owner then offered Joseph any book he wanted for free, even inviting him to pick one himself. Joseph, while welcoming the gesture, declined the offer, saying he had nothing to return the favor with, but he would defer to the owner's offer. The owner expressed his thanks for the gift, saying he really liked this sword, and asked if he could pull the blade out to look. Joseph panicked, seeing the owner had already noticed the curse concentrated on the blade. The owner then described the blade as flowing white fire, shining across the bookstore, thin, razor-sharp, and beaming a mesmerizing light, thinking it was so beautiful. Joseph, shivering, saw the evil forces gushing out like venom, confirming it was the true curse of Candela, targeting the wielder first. The owner noticed an inscription on the blade in an ancient, unknown language, seeing it as a rare opportunity to study and telling himself to steady and look closer. Joseph watched as the cursed objects arose with an eye and a horn skull shivered, thinking this was bad because the owner hadn't acted, and the evil forces were about to bind him. Joseph hesitated to intervene, thinking the owner must have a plan. But he was so frantic, even more so than in his most dangerous battle where he almost crushed an opponent's brain. He admitted this was more gripping than holding the firing button of a star cannon, never expecting to see an illusion of a battle between gods in the bookstore, and question the owner's plan. Joseph truly believed he saw an unfathomable, taboo being, and though he couldn't understand the dark mass, his instinct warned him of grave danger. Joseph was shocked by the horror of the vision, where the supposed evil forces were clearly terrified, dying, and filled with panic. He described the feeling like watching a prey caught by a serial killer, hearing the silent cries of the victims banging on a chamber window. He even felt sorry for those forces in their tragedy, before noticing the lower part of the blade seemed to have darkened, feeling dirty. The owner decided to swing the sword since he had nothing to wipe it with, and upon swinging, the blade became brighter with a piercing light. He concluded it wasn't dirt, but special craftsmanship, telling Joseph his sword was interesting because what he thought was dirt was actually part of the design. Joseph was completely shocked, thinking, is this really happening? As the curse that troubled the secret instrument tower and killed many knights was gone just like that. Joseph realized the bookstore owner was mocking him by calling the curse part of the design, wondering if it was just a toy to him. The owner offered Joseph any book for free, even asking if he wanted to pick one himself. Joseph politely declined, saying he had nothing to return the favor with, but welcomed the gesture and would defer to the owner's suggestion. As the owner lifted his hand in acceptance, the bookstore owner smiled, looking very pleased with how things turned out. Joseph internally agreed that the gesture was welcome, even though he felt overwhelmed by the owner's power and the sudden cleansing of the sword. The owner noticed the sword felt much lighter than he thought, confirming it was a ceremonial sword with a noble, light handicraft. He marveled at the intricate design, feeling this craftsmanship deserved his attention, while Joseph watched, completely in awe. Joseph realized the owner was handling the sword so easily without using ether, something he couldn't do, and that all its materials came from the dream world. The owner found the sword so gorgeous and elegant, exclaiming it was so pretty, and mused that a man's love for weapons comes from fighting instinct. He thanked Joseph and asked if he could pull the blade out, which Joseph realized meant the owner had already noticed the curse. Joseph explained that the main part of the curse of Candela was on the blade because the elven king Candela used it to commit suicide while driven mad by plague. He continued that Candela's soul was trapped in the blade forever, and back when the ancient kingdom existed, this legendary king could rival gods themselves. Ancient texts all recorded that Candela commanded the lion and the eagle, supported by millions of citizens, and his power with light and fire was like lifting the sun. Candela was the only one who fought against the tide during that dark era, the only one who dared challenge the nameless god, even though he ultimately failed. Even so, his lingering power was still strong, and not even the indescribable could deal with the maddening curse of Candela's anger and soul. Joseph warned that whoever touched the sword would be infected like a plague, and even the highly trained radiant knights of the secret instrument tower would eventually fall to it. He pointed out that the tower designed the hilt to suppress the curse, but once unsheathed, the curse would affect the wielder first, driving them mad instantly if their willpower wasn't strong enough. Joseph finished by saying, however, it's the bookstore owner this time, and allowed him to take a look, but warned him to be careful. The owner said of course he would be careful, not wanting to accidentally cut himself, thinking he was right about the owner being considerate the first time they met. As the blade emerged, it shone like flowing white fire, lighting up the entire bookstore, thin and razor-sharp, beaming a mesmerizing light that the owner found beautiful. Suddenly, Joseph realized with horror that the evil forces were gushing out like venom, which was the true curse of Candela, and its first target was the wielder, the bookstore owner. The owner noticed an inscription on the blade in an ancient, unknown language, which he saw as a rare opportunity and told himself to steady and look closer. Joseph felt this was bad, as the owner hadn't acted yet, and the evil forces were about to bind him, wondering if he should intervene but then stopping himself, assuming the owner had a plan. Joseph became extremely frantic, feeling this was more gripping than holding the button of the star cannon, as he witnessed an illusion of a battle between gods across eons in the bookstore. Joseph truly believed he saw an unfathomable, taboo being, and despite not comprehending the dark mass, his instinct and sanity sent a chill down his spine. Joseph was horrified by what he saw, the supposedly greedy evil forces in a state of terror, panic, and dying, like prey caught by a serial killer in a horror movie. He could almost hear their silent cries and screams through the ether from the tragedy, and surprisingly felt sorry for those forces. The owner then wondered why the lower part of the blade felt like it had darkened and felt a bit dirty, deciding to swing it since he had nothing else to wipe it with. When he swung the sword, the blade became even brighter, like it had a special effect of piercing light, leading him to think it wasn't dirt but special craftsmanship. The owner told Joseph his sword was really interesting, saying he thought it was dirty, but it was actually part of the design. Joseph was stunned and speechless, thinking, is this really happening? As the curse that troubled the secret instrument tower and killed many radiant knights was gone just like that. Joseph thought that the bookstore owner even mockingly said the dirty curse was part of the design, making him wonder if it was just a toy to the owner. The owner then asked Joseph if there was any book he wanted to read, offering it for free and asking if Joseph wanted to pick one himself. Joseph declined, saying he didn't have anything to return the favor with, but he greatly welcomed the gesture and would defer the choice to the owner. The bookstore owner smiled, looking pleased as Joseph deferred to him, with a dark, shadowy figure behind him. Joseph, still intimidated and sweating, simply said no thanks. He accepted the owner's kindness but ultimately said he would defer the choice to the owner. It was raining heavily outside the building. Inside the warm, book-filled room, the shop owner thought it was not right to not give something back after receiving such an expensive gift. He decided to use this chance to advertise his big collection of books and let Joseph pick one himself as thanks. The owner thought the feeling of finding a great book is wonderful and Joseph would surely like it, plus it would build trust with his customer. He then asked Joseph if there was any book he wanted to read, offering to give it for free and letting him pick one himself. Joseph politely refused, saying he preferred the shop owner to choose for him. The shop owner insisted, mentioning how massive his book stockpile was. Joseph appreciated the kindness, but stated that the books the owner recommended were the most suitable for him. The shop owner was a bit surprised by this, wondering if he had pushed too hard with his soul-healing words. He realized that Joseph was more comfortable with him picking a book rather than choosing himself, which meant Joseph was becoming a regular like old Willa. This was unexpectedly good progress, though the owner felt a bit sad he couldn't show off his whole collection. Meanwhile, Joseph noticed the shop owner looked a bit disappointed, which confused him. Joseph then remembered how easily this person removed the curse that troubled many radiant knights. He thought the owner must be unsatisfied with the secret instrument tower and his own strength. After being touched by a higher existence twice, Joseph truly felt his own lack and ignorance. He grimly realized that justice without power can never save anyone. Realistically, he knew he could only rely on this person's guidance and gifts. Joseph then wondered who would dare pick a book on their own, calling such a person an idiot. He thought Joseph seemed fond of fairy tales, maybe Andersen's fairy tales, but he couldn't keep recommending the same genre. He decided to pick a book that might help Joseph with his current situation. He presented the book, saying if Joseph paid attention, he was sure he would learn a great deal. The book's title seemed to be about stars align. Joseph inwardly cursed himself for bragging about his self-control, as he couldn't even steady his prosthetic arm. He thought this was partly because the unknowable, terrifying being just then was a bit overwhelming. That instant battle of gods was like a quick firework in the night sky, showing incomprehensible power and strength. It radiated such dread from just showing a small part of its capability, making Joseph think, if there's a god, that has to be it. Joseph also remembered that the cosmos has always been a high taboo in mystical fields, beyond which lies the chilling, infinite void. And now, God had brought out a book about the cosmos. The shop owner said this book, a legend, might be difficult to understand, suggesting Joseph see it as just fiction about another world's lost civilization. Joseph wondered if he meant the cosmos, and then realized there could be a civilization beyond the cosmos. He was shocked, wondering if this book held the truth of this world, and he found himself in this dark place again. The man floating in the dark space said, "Have no fear, my customer." He told Joseph that at the very least he wouldn't find danger here. Noticing Joseph seemed calmer now, Joseph, still reeling, looked up and asked who the speaker was, as his name was not important. The figure told him to call him L if he must use a name. Joseph, whose name was Lin Jai, accepted, saying, "All right, Mr. Mester." L explained that this wasn't really a place. If he had to describe it, it was his first and last chance to decide before facing endless insanity and delirium. He assured Joseph that nothing would happen as long as he stayed, but if he left, his reason would no longer protect his mind. Mr. L stated that only those whose will hasn't been consumed by the stars are worthy of becoming a beacon for lost travelers. Joseph replied that even though he didn't know what the stars were or if he could become a beacon, he was willing to do what he could to prevent further tragedies. Mr. L said there was no need to decide right now. Then, Mr. L suggested they play a game first, snapping his fingers, which caused strange, multi-sided dice to appear and fly around. The masked man stood up and said, "Let's play a game first." A man looked shocked, wondering what was happening because he suddenly could not move. He realized this must be the game the other person mentioned, as just one line from him stopped all his movements, and floating dice showed the rules. He worried about what the other person was planning, as the masked figure seemed to have finished setting up his little game. Then a command was given, "Move with your companion," and something rushed towards him with a whoosh. The man wondered if the masked figure had the power to create actual life from nothing, because the thing that appeared felt truly alive. This newly created companion even felt close, like a true partner, making the man question if his thoughts were even being influenced by the words spoken. The masked man continued to lay out the scenario, telling him and his companion that they were now in a derelict building. The dice kept spinning as the narrative explained that the building looked old and worn down, while the dice's energy seemed to be setting the scene. The immobilized man was shown a long set of glowing stairs leading up to a shadowy figure, while the environment around him started to crack apart. Suddenly, the scenery changed, and the man found himself standing in the pouring rain amidst ruined buildings, looking up in shock. He realized that words alone could make structures appear, making him think the masked man might be a very powerful being in the dream world. Or it could be something even scarier, that the dream world was being used to hide what was really happening in reality, which made his eyes widen. With perception successful, the dice hovered as the rules continued, stating that his spirit sense noticed something strange. He felt like something was watching him, and his instincts told him to look behind, where a truly horrifying creature appeared. A massive, multi-eyed, tentacled creature with gaping mouths materialized before him, making a truly unspeakable sight. The man was horrified that the other person could create something so terrible, and he desperately wanted to fight back. He tried to focus his ether to fight, but he realized with terror that his mutant abilities had also been taken away. He worried that not only was his movement stopped, but his mutant powers were gone too, just as a monstrous tentacle grabbed at him. The creature seemed to grab him as he cried out in pain and utter shock. The scream was loud as the terrifying situation reached its peak. He was instructed to look at and touch this forbidden being, which instantly filled his mind with countless strange and amazing images. The deranged words polluted his mind, blurring the line between what was real and what was a hallucination, causing him to lose consciousness under crushing fear. He felt like he fell into a bottomless empty space with nothing around him, while a message said his existence was about to be eaten by a mysterious force. As he held on to his last bit of sanity, the game asked him what his very last action would be. He clenched his jaw and focused his eyes, trying to fight the encroaching darkness. The man, now slightly clearer, grimaced as the monstrous creature wrapped around him. With his last conscious thought, he shoved his companion forward, and something cracked violently. The masked man watched calmly in the library setting as a massive purple energy burst forth from the creature's direction. A huge, monstrous figure with glowing green eyes reached out toward the masked man. The energy attack continued, plunging downwards into the darkness. The man felt himself rise up, and a voice declared that he succeeded. The scene shifted to a cosmic background filled with countless glowing green eyes and books swirling around in a vortex. A single book floated in the space amidst the swirling cosmos and eyes. The darkness and the chaotic energy seemed to shatter as the scene broke apart. The man found himself lying down on a calm body of water, looking up at a bright, white light with small bubbles falling around him. He groaned, glad to be free from the horrifying whispers, and felt like that crazy game was finally over. He sat up, surrounded by a black, thick liquid, and saw the truly monstrous form of the creature, which was identified as the crawling chaos, Nyarlathotep. The full terrifying body of the pinkish, tentacled entity was displayed. The man looked horrified again, letting out a small sound as he saw the creature's massive mouth filled with sharp teeth and countless eyes. A reflection showed a tiny figure, perhaps himself, trapped inside one of the massive eyes, while the words mentioned Demon Sultan Azathoth. The close-up showed more grotesque details of the creature's interior, covered in veins and eyes. The scene showed the man standing in the black water, seemingly free from the immediate horror, while notes referenced lyrics about Demon Sultan Azathoth. The focus returned to the colossal entity, described as the center of the universe. Its form seemed to stretch into the starry background, with strange protrusions moving. The man looked up as the giant entity pulsed with energy, featuring a huge, glowing red eye, while music notes implied maddening drums and hellish flutes. The background shifted to warm red tones with swirling patterns, suggesting intense auditory or mental effects. A close-up of an eye showed the contrast between the blue energy of the man and the red intensity of the scene. The scene expanded into a vast galaxy with spiraling shapes, showing the man floating upside down amidst the massive entity. The entity, now more clearly depicted in purple and black, was swaying mindlessly, and the text noted that this was Yog-Sothoth, the key and the gate, dancing for the outer gods. The cosmic backdrop was stunning, with galaxies visible, while footnotes confirmed the entity's identity. A dark, massive central eye appeared, glowing yellow, surrounded by smaller eyes and tentacles stretching into the starry void. A small figure was visible within the bright yellow center of the large eye. The giant eye and the surrounding tentacles were framed against the beautiful nebula of space. The background was filled with vibrant blue and purple galaxies, emphasizing the cosmic scale of what just happened. A bright cyan and yellow swirling energy formed, looking like a powerful discharge or reaction. The scene turned completely black after the burst of light. The man gasped sharply, clearly shaken by the experience, even though the game seemed to be over. He looked at his metallic arm, realizing he was back to a more familiar state. A drop of water fell, and the man slowly came to his senses, confirming his name was Joseph. He looked up, realizing he desperately wanted to escape the memory, but his brain felt like it was overheating from the strain. He tried to calm down, forcing himself not to dwell on the horrifying things he experienced, focusing on staying steady. He now understood the bookstore owner's true intention. Calling the book a fictional novel was just a way to keep him from completely losing his mind. He figured the owner wanted to save the last bits of his sanity, and he smirked, realizing his previous assessment of the owner was wrong, though not incorrect. He realized this might not be so bad after all, as he thought about how the owner was far beyond the Class L level of the secret instrument tower. Joseph started thinking about the great beings mentioned in the legendary work. He wondered if those legendary figures were part of that ancient civilization, holding the book and looking thoughtful. The bookstore owner subtly shut the book as Joseph asked the complex question, causing Joseph to look confused. The owner thought to himself that the things in the legendary work were probably too hard for Joseph to grasp. The book was titled Decisive Moments in History, showing figures from an old civilization against a backdrop of planets. The masked owner smiled, saying, of course, agreeing with the implied understanding. He explained that those figures were the monuments and makers of an old civilization, but he followed up by saying that nothing lasts forever, and even the greatest things are washed away by time. Joseph clenched his fist, understanding that the bookstore owner was right, feeling that the book was holding those powerful beings in some kind of seal. He mused that one could summon them by meeting certain requirements, but it seemed very risky, and they were once part of an even higher civilization. He recalled that like ancient kingdoms, that civilization fell, and these beings deteriorated and were sealed away. Joseph concluded that the one who sealed them was undoubtedly the unimaginable bookstore owner right in front of him, which confused the owner slightly. The bookstore owner sensed Joseph's overthinking and decided to offer some guidance for Joseph's future reading experience. He told Joseph it was normal to feel lost since he couldn't understand everything in the book yet. The owner advised Joseph not to worry about the hard parts, stressing that the important thing was to understand the minds within the book and make them useful. Joseph looked doubtful, thinking making those minds useful sounded tricky for him, while the owner urged him not to give up. The bookstore owner told Joseph to work hard since it was his decision, and he should let go of his past, both pain and glory. He suggested that having challenges in a new life was normal, and Joseph should start by using the book sensibly. The owner then offered the book as a gift and told Joseph to go read it well, while Joseph, feeling enlightened, thanked him for the generosity and teaching. The owner humbly replied that he was just passing on other people's ideas and then shared a quote about how many people are needed for one genius to appear. He continued the quote, explaining that millions of hours must pass before a truly historical moment arrives. The quote went on to say that when strong personal will clashes with historical fate, sparks fly, and that moment shines forever in history, creating a stage for heroes. The owner clarified he wasn't asking Joseph to be a hero, as the world rarely sets such stages. He reminded Joseph that he is just one human with limits, so he shouldn't overestimate or underestimate himself. The owner told Joseph to just fulfill his destiny when the time comes, saying he doesn't need to shine forever like a star. He explained that by following his own will and belief, his existence would light his path like a lamp that can never be hidden in the dark. The scene shifts to Joseph, who is now an officially recognized trainee knight, standing before an older man who administers an oath. The older man asked Joseph to swear upon the holy light to commit his life to justice. Joseph, looking determined, promised that the sword in his hand would forever fight for the light. The older man urged him not to forget how he felt right now and to keep going, as everyone has their own fate. In a bright, stained glass-lit room, Joseph stood ready, facing a knight in shining armor. The older man told Joseph that his light would be his alone, and then administered the formal oath to trainee knight Joseph Abraham. Joseph answered firmly, "I do," to the question of swearing his life to justice. He swore upon the holy light, looking very emotional. He declared that the sword in his hands would forever fight for the light. As Joseph looked up, he saw the reflection of the white-clad man from earlier, who reminded him not to forget this moment. The man then told Joseph to keep at it and remember that everyone has their own fate. The bookstore owner, smiling, suggested that perhaps this book could help Joseph fulfill his destiny. Joseph clenched his fist in resolve as the scene moved outside to a dark, rainy cityscape dominated by a church spire. Joseph, under the heavy rain, affirmed his commitment, saying, I will. A man stands in the rain, his boots making a sound as he pauses, taking a deep breath. He feels very nostalgic looking at the falling rain and needs to calm himself down. He breathes in the cold, fresh air. This man feels full of energy after a long time, standing powerfully in the pouring rain. He remembers the struggle he faced with an evil laugh sound effect echoing nearby. He looks determined, his body glowing with energy. There are sharp sounds as he adjusts something on his metallic arm. Another character seems to be smiling widely, showing a lot of teeth. Feeling much better, the man with the scarred face grins, stating he feels alive in this cold, fresh air. He is finally feeling energetic. It has been a while since he felt this energized, and he reflects on how carrying that magic sword for years constantly invaded his consciousness with evil magic power. Because of the fight between his own will and that evil magic, he constantly suffered from severe headaches, making it impossible to control his power or stay rational. As a knight who only does battle quests, this constant headache was a very serious problem for him. He also lost his right hand fighting an old wizard. Losing his hand made his condition even worse, but the magic sword that had been bothering him for decades was finally taken away. The bookstore owner completely devoured the magic curse, making the knight feel like he had recovered from a long, chronic sickness. He yells out, feeling extremely something as he raises his hand towards the sky and the glowing blue aura. He feels utterly free, even though he lost his weapon, because he regained his determination and confidence, and the bookstore owner gave him a gift. He thinks it is not a bad deal, as he even gained something from the exchange, and once he adapts, he will regain his peak power. He just needs time to get used to this new change, this extraordinary aura, as a hooded figure approaches him in the rain. The hooded figure passes by him, making a slight sound, and then apologizes as he walks past the glowing knight. The hooded man moves past quickly with a whoosh sound, saying, "Excuse me." The knight is surprised by the sudden appearance and feels an extraordinary aura coming from the other man. The hooded man is thought to be a hunter with an extremely pure blood source, and judging by how he suppresses his aura, he must have at least destruction level powers. The knight wonders if this powerful hunter of unknown origin is a solo hunter because no one like that belongs to the White Wolves. He considers the situation carefully. He thinks about asking the stranger if he will cooperate, but then dismisses the idea. He decides to forget about it, realizing it is too risky to question a destruction level person without any solid proof, as the secret tower might get into trouble. The knight turns away, feeling calmer and realizing he doesn't sense any killing intent from the stranger. He concludes that the stranger is likely not the type to look for trouble, and he will only deal with him if something happens later on. The hooded figure walks away into the dark street. As the knight walks off, the hooded figure pauses, a menacing red glow appearing in his eyes, and he prepares to draw a knife. He holds a sharp knife ready in his hand, but then withdraws it as the scene shifts to a conversation between two other people. One character asks Claude how his quest to find the White Wolves hunters is going, emphasizing the need to be careful. Claude replies that it is going smoothly, but then his superior tells him to use his free time to research materials on the language of the Kingdom of Elfos, as the bookstore owner was interested in the ancient language on the magic sword. He also warns Claude to be wary of the white-haired solo hunter, who is probably destruction level, so he should just gather intel. Claude's superior states that he has important work and won't be returning to the Mystery Tower for a while. He instructs Claude that if anything happens, he should sort it out on time and not report everything. Claude understands and tells his teacher he has worked hard. This character declares it is time to chill out since he has worked hard for so long and is definitely taking a week's break to forget about work. He remembers some dusty research materials in the study room and decides to look for anything related to the ancient language. He sighs, wishing Melissa shared even half the bookstore owner's thirst for knowledge. He then remembers that Melissa gets headaches from reading and wonders who she took after, but quickly dismisses it, thinking it doesn't matter if a knight can read as long as they can fight. A close-up shows someone thanking me with a shocked expression. The first man spins around in shock, noticing the messy room. The floor is covered with open and closed books scattered everywhere. He exclaims in shock about what happened to the room. He looks concerned and hangs up a piece of cloth. He stands still looking at the mess, realizing it is 6:30 p.m. He notes that this is usually Melissa's dinner time, but he doesn't smell anything from the kitchen. He confirms he can't sense anyone in the kitchen, even though he knows she has amazing cooking skills. He imagines his cute little girl wearing an apron and frying a juicy steak with basil potatoes in the pan. He continues imagining her frying 2 sausages sprinkled with rosemary, the aroma filling the kitchen, and she smiles happily. He reflects that she would understand his hard work by preparing such a meal for her own father, thinking this is how things should be. Man looks down at a book on the floor, titled in a foreign language. He picks up the book with his mechanical hand. He looks intently at the book, which reads A Knight's Justice and has Buggy written underneath. He recalls the book's author. His eyes widen as he remembers the author's name. He states the author's name is Joseph Winston, and then shifts to another scene where someone is talking about stepping down. Thanks for helping pack luggage. The speaker says they won't be the commander of the battle section and a knight of the glory chivalric order from tomorrow onwards. He explains that some commoners found his combat style unsuitable for knights to learn, but he still wrote down these methods in a book for them to pass on. Another character looked at him seriously. The speaker continues, saying he knows the new factions want to act radically, but he sticks to his opinion, believing in the holy light is what matters, not a sincere tribute. He questions if sticking to the old way knights fight is the only way to show chivalry. He yells that chivalry is a burden, and then the scene flashes to a dark, intense moment showing someone proficient in assassination and stealth. This person is shown throwing poison knives, and his motto is that knights can kill people, but they are outsiders. The first speaker sighs, realizing his disciple is also a troublemaker as he looks at a document while holding the book. The scene shifts to a very muscular man with glasses sitting in a chair, identified as Hanayama Koru, the commander of the Knights of the Combat section of the Secret Tower. Hanayama Koru asks what the other person wants to say about the mission, looking down at a piece of paper, and the person replies, "I want to say." A big, tough-looking guy explains that if someone cannot win, they should train or study their opponent, saying only weak people do that. He continues his strong statement, then suddenly asks if the other person has ever heard a story about the Night Order. The narration takes them back to the year 1616, in the districts of Nakan, where a series of future events started happening. It tells of a rogue knight who came to a noble family's house in Hanayama and asked if he could stay the night. The big guy dismisses the need for the story, saying he has understood enough with a forceful slam of his metal arm. This action makes the other person wonder if that's why he got into trouble by being reckless instead of gathering information for his mission. A nervous person begs the angry teacher to calm down, worrying that he might get someone killed. The teacher roars in anger, with a close-up on his sweaty hand reaching out. The man admits his blood pressure rises just remembering that incident, and quickly decides not to talk about his disciples anymore. He states that at least until he retires, he won't have a good impression of someone named Buggy, and then asks if someone else isn't doing pretty good too. The focus shifts to the other person, who seems intense, wondering if the good one is not a disciple. The big man points towards a pile of books, explaining that all of them are about the basics of being a knight. He says these books have very basic but useful knowledge for newcomers, but then mentions that he personally trained Melissa in the Glory Chivalric Order. He then declares that those books were worthless, but now he sees them all being flipped through. He is clearly shocked, wondering what exactly is going on as he moves toward the source of the noise. The sound of a heavy object hitting the floor is heard as the man walks toward a door, calling out a name. He calls out Melissa with a very intense look in his eyes as he approaches a room. Inside the room, a girl is seen sitting at a desk, intensely focused on reading many books under a desk lamp, surrounded by stacks of books. The focus narrows on the observing man's face as he watches the girl engrossed in reading. The man stands among the tall stacks of books, looking down in disbelief. The girl, illuminated by the lamp, continues to read, while outside, the sound of books being moved is heard. The sound of rustling is followed by the man entering the room and shouting, Melissa with great shock. He demands to know what she is doing as she swiftly moves, turning pages with great speed. The girl looks up with glowing eyes, completely absorbed in her reading. She simply replies, learning, leaving the man utterly confused with question marks floating around his head. The man steps forward, calling her "Hey, Melissa my dear" in a soft tone now. He reminds her that he recalls her saying she hated learning since she was 4 years old, holding a book in his hand. He asks her again if it was since she was 4, as she dramatically flips a page. She admits she was foolish and did not understand the true meaning of learning back then due to her ignorance and limited potential, so she couldn't enjoy it. She even says that if she could meet her 4-year-old self, she would smack her with a cane. She finishes by saying she would tell her 4-year-old self to start learning, and then touches her face in deep contemplation. The man leans in close, looking concerned, and asks if she is okay. She replies that she is very clear-headed and has never felt this good, while the man's eye twitches in surprise. She continues, saying she has come to understand her weakness and stupidity. She explains that she gave up on learning because she lacked self-discipline, which made her learning inefficient and led her away from her goal, making her panic now. She cries out that she is such a failure, and the man reacts with a silent, shocked scream. He wonders if this is still his naive, easygoing, but reckless and adorable daughter, thinking someone must have switched places with her. He points at her, realizing he is talking about her, and she retorts that his teaching methods were too barbaric. She adds that his experience actually had no real methods, but tells him not to worry anymore. The man stumbles back as she finishes her sentence, leaving him speechless. She tells him she has already finished reading all the books there, and is close to finding her own path, saying it's not too late to start again. She states that she is close to finding her own path and that it's not too late to start again, as the man looks up at her in awe. The man is completely stunned, asking if she means wait everything. She confirms with a simple yes, everything, as the camera shows the huge number of books around them on the desk and floor. The man looks around the room filled with books, realizing the massive extent of what she has done. He then asks how long she has been reading for, while she stares back intensely. She explains that she borrowed all the books in just 1 day. She continues that she has been reading them for 3 days, which causes the man to collapse onto a desk. She jumps back from the desk with a loud slap sound. She looks utterly terrified and shouts, "Daddy," with wide, bloodshot eyes. She then asks in horror, "What are you?" as the man's eye focuses intensely. The man looks down at her with a simple "huh," as a bright blue light fills the background. He grabs her roughly by the neck, appearing aggressive again. The focus shifts to the bottom as the man is holding her. He gently caresses her cheek with his hand, showing a moment of surprising tenderness. The man glares intensely, a hiss sound effect playing as he glares down at her. He throws her backward forcefully, causing a loud rumble near the window. The man is holding the girl, who seems limp, and then there is a moment of silence indicated by ellipses. The scene shifts abruptly to an outside view in the pouring rain where a mysterious figure in a hood stands, stating he definitely did not expect to come back here so soon. This hooded figure stands before a building, and a giant skeletal dragon-like construct looms over him, relating to the Truth Society. The hooded man expresses his wish that he didn't have to come to this place again, standing before the massive skeletal figure. He explains that it is very hard for a hunter to adapt to such an environment, describing a hunter's life as steel, blood, fights, chaos, and madness, a wild beast disguised as a human. He contrasts this with the Truth Society, which worships knowledge and rationality, mentioning that most members smell average, with the only persistent scent being the scent of curiosity. The scene changes to an interior where a man sits comfortably, as the hooded figure observes that the place's dullness can't be hidden, no matter how luxurious it looks. The seated man, Vice President Andrew, looks sharply at the newcomer, addressing him as Mr. Ackerman and noting he is late. Mr. Ackerman, now identified as Burton Ackerman, replies that hunters are never late, only arriving at the set time, and then teases Andrew about his patience when waiting for ladies at a ball. Andrew, looking slightly annoyed by the joke, asks for an apology for his negligence if that's the case. Ackerman cuts him off, saying enough with the joke and to get to business, with a close-up on his intense eye. Andrew then identifies him as Mr. Burton Ackerman, the moonlit walker. Ackerman asks directly if Andrew means about giving up the mission to kill Wilda. Burton Ackerman, now seated and looking menacing in a long dark coat, chillingly asks, "Can I not?" The scene starts dramatically outside, maybe on a building edge, with a gargoyle-like structure looking down as rain pours. Looking through the gargoyle's eye, an interior scene is visible where two men are sitting and talking across a table. The man with the monocle is asking the other seated man if he really means abandoning the mission to kill Wilda. The scarred man sitting down gives a defiant look and asks if he has a choice in the matter. The man with the monocle clarifies he is not talking about giving up the bounty, but rather asking what went wrong between the two of them. It is mentioned that only 3 days have passed since a hunter wholeheartedly accepted a bounty but then decided to quit instantly. The scarred man, Ackerman, replies that 3 days was just enough time for him to do a basic investigation. The man with the monocle, who is Vice President Andrew, confirms that Ackerman already did his first investigation. Andrew states that Ackerman investigated the bookstore's surroundings and even went inside once. Furthermore, the backup ether detector was activated, but it didn't pick up any energy fluctuations. The ether detection network also showed that the bookstore area was very calm and peaceful, as if nothing was wrong. Andrew finds this unbelievable, thinking that perhaps Ackerman decided to abandon the mission even before starting any real action. Meanwhile, someone named Lin Jai is shown reacting to this news with disbelief, wondering if it makes any sense. Lin Jai finds it impossible that Ackerman would lose his will just from talking to the bookstore owner. Andrew admits he cannot judge the situation rationally and believes there must be other hidden reasons. Andrew recalls that Mr. Ackerman was very eager to get the certification to advance to the destructive level. Andrew looks intently at Ackerman, reminding him of his past eagerness for promotion. Ackerman confirms he was indeed very eager to get the promotion back then. Ackerman, while looking down, affirms that he was eager, and then in a close-up, he clenches his fist. Andrew asks why he chose to abandon the mission now, pointing out that Wilda is the easiest destructive level bounty available. Ackerman sits back confidently, leaning on his chair. Andrew continues, saying the reward was generous and Ackerman was determined to succeed. Then he addresses him as Vice President Andrew. Andrew emphasizes that Wilda was the easiest mission in terms of overall difficulty. Ackerman interrupts, telling Vice President Andrew that he doesn't need to stick his nose into why he is abandoning the mission. Ackerman calmly states that there is nothing Andrew needs to worry about, and there's no rule about stating the reason for abandoning a mission. Ackerman then points out that Andrew seems a bit anxious. Andrew sits stiffly, looking tense across the table. Andrew thinks to himself that he might have used Ackerman before, but that was when Ackerman didn't know about it. The real reason he used him was to investigate the indescribable level pioneer in that area. Andrew realizes that now that Ackerman has quit, things are getting tense, and since Ackerman holds the power now, convincing him to change his mind would make Andrew look suspicious. Andrew decides it's useless to fret and that the most important thing is to lighten the mood. Andrew says he is worried for the safety of Nakin, mentioning that it has been turbulent recently. Andrew expresses hope that someone can help resolve the issue and asks for understanding of their position. Ackerman internally notes that Andrew is losing his cool, which he might have missed if not for the bookstore owner's insight. He observes that although the vice president is covering it well, something is off with his attitude. Ackerman concludes that this confirms everything. The Truth Society is using him to investigate the bookstore owner. He then states that even though a hunter's life is full of killing, it doesn't mean they only know how to kill. A vivid, red-hued image shows Ackerman standing ready for a fight, with a giant eye watching, stating that without a certain extent of acuity, they couldn't survive in their world. Ackerman apologizes, saying he is not interested in maintaining law and order and that abandoning the mission is purely for his personal reasons. Ackerman smugly tells Andrew that he must be very clear about his background, or rather, aware of how hunters are. Ackerman asserts that hunters are egoists who only hunt valuable prey, comparing them to wild beasts seeking benefits and avoiding trouble. Ackerman declares his current goal is to establish a hunter organization, which makes him an enemy of the Truth Society. Ackerman thinks to himself that these arrogant and ignorant people don't realize how powerful the bookstore owner is, while the owner seems willing to be hunted, so he will keep them in the dark. Andrew wonders who the trouble is, thinking if he asks Ackerman directly, Ackerman won't say Wilda, but something else. Andrew realizes if it's not the bookstore owner, the only other option is the Truth Society, and wonders if Ackerman found something out. Noting his change in attitude after visiting the bookstore, Andrew wonders if Ackerman learned something from the bookstore owner, which could mean he was easily instigated by words in such a short time. Andrew realizes the bookstore owner doesn't need to recruit anyone, he just needs to provoke people. He curses that he has many questions but can't ask further. Andrew accepts Ackerman's decision not to convince him further, but then adds that the news of accepting the bounty will be public evidence. Andrew states that consequently, the news of abandoning the mission will also be made public. Andrew asks if Ackerman is fine with that, causing Andrew to look furious, while Ackerman realizes this is a power move, a threat regarding his reputation. Ackerman stands up, agreeing that he is fine with it, and internally notes that the vice president is threatening him now that he sees his opportunities slipping away. Andrew thinks about Ackerman's reputation, recalling that he was a true talent young, and a playboy who chased the elven sage of the Iris family. Andrew recalls that the famous pursuit had no outcome, and he thought Ackerman was good for nothing, not expecting him to become a big shot. Andrew mutters that he didn't expect Ackerman to be a big shot, but he still tends to make mistakes sometimes. Ackerman challenges Andrew, asking if he's trying to threaten him with his reputation, stating that hunters prefer an infamous reputation over none. Ackerman explains he has always been low-key as a panic-level hunter, but now that he is gathering hunters, he needs to advertise himself. Ackerman, with a confident smile, states his need for advertisement as he walks away from the table, his tattered coat dragging slightly. Ackerman leaves the room. Andrew is left alone, clearly frustrated by Ackerman's departure, making a sudden move. Andrew is seen with conflicted expressions, realizing he has underestimated the Moonlit Walker. He reflects that after talking to him, he got a sense of Ackerman's behavior. Andrew recalls the rumors that Ackerman is like the bell ringer of the clock tower, patiently waiting for the dawn when facing a target. Andrew acknowledges that Ackerman is exactly as the rumors say. Andrew is shown in a close-up looking enraged as he stares into a glass of red liquid, thinking how dare a destructive level hunter target the Truth Society. He thinks that if the mysterious bookstore owner behind this was truly kind and always helping others, he should have helped Ackerman complete the mission immediately. Andrew realizes that not only did the owner not help, but he also tarnished his own reputation by the situation. Andrew suspects the bookstore owner must have foreseen all this and wonders if the owner is biased toward Wilda. He decides it's not the time to hesitate and he must quickly get all of Ackerman's information. Andrew wipes something from his wrist and then places a device on the table, deciding he must get the information immediately. Andrew grabs a small book and a key, then makes a call on a small device. The call connects to the intelligence section of the secret tower. The person answering has a voice that is not Joseph's, leading Andrew to realize it must be Joseph's disciple, Claude. Claude politely offers assistance, stating he is temporarily in charge of the intelligence section because his teacher is on leave. Andrew asks if they have the complete information for the indescribable level area. No. 0113. Claude gets excited, saying that their information was just updated, but hints that the latest information is very valuable. Claude hesitates, thinking he can't ask for funds like his teacher and feels guilty about potentially charging for information. Andrew asks how much it is, while the person on the other end is shown struggling internally, thinking about how often he's been cheated by his teacher. Claude, looking stressed, asks Andrew to wait a moment. On a computer screen, an instruction pops up, by Old Man lock all files and information regarding No. 0113. Claude looks shocked and says as he sees the new instruction. Claude, now looking distressed, speaks into the phone, apologizing to Mr. Andrew. Andrew is left hearing the apology, clearly upset. Andrew, holding the phone, is told by Claude that they won't be selling the information. A man on a balcony in the rain is shocked, wondering if he heard correctly that a deal was rejected. He recalls that the Mystery Tower always helps the Truth Society, even with very hard cases, because they constantly update their rankings. He even skipped the usual drama and didn't bargain the price this time, so there was no way the Mystery Tower would say no, yet he was rejected straight away. What made him even angrier was that Claude, the young guy, spoke to him with the exact same tone the older man used just seconds before. This meant the files were available for sale just moments ago, but now they are not for sale at all. He suspects someone interfered in that short time to make Claude change his mind, and the only person who could order Claude without hesitation is Joseph Abraham, who is currently on a break and let his disciple take over. The man, with a heavy chest and looking down at a picture in his mechanical hand, sits by a sleeping woman. The picture shows him happily holding a small child with another woman. He looks sternly, seemingly speechless after the conversation. He checks a device and then calls again while standing in the rain. He insists on speaking to Joseph directly. The person on the other end, standing in a room full of books, apologizes, saying the teacher has urgent matters and cannot be connected. The person offers to answer any questions directly and give proper explanations instead. The man outside, still in the rain, asks Claude to explain why they are suddenly refusing to sell the files. Claude, on the phone, explains it was due to his negligence. He states that the confidentiality for file No. 013 has been changed from top secret to sealed, meaning even with the caller's privileges, the information is inaccessible. Claude continues, saying selling it would violate rules and bring severe punishment, mentioning he is covering for his teacher and is still new to the operations of the intelligence section. He apologizes for the mistake and says the good thing is he caught it early to avoid bad consequences, but he doesn't know about other things. Claude suggests that if the caller really needs the files, he should talk to the teacher when he returns or give feedback to the elders. The caller mutters an angry curse under his breath, and then exclaims how despicable it is that Claude is clearly pushing the blame away, but he cannot find any fault in what he said. He gets very frustrated thinking that Claude is claiming to be just a temporary staff member following his superior's orders, making it impossible to argue against him no matter how polite he is. He feels just as angry as the last time, like he is being fooled again, and the main problem remains the reason for the confidentiality upgrade on the files. The man outside tries to calm himself down, reminding himself to stay elegant, and wonders why the confidentiality was upgraded after only half a month. He questions if the files are still the same, focusing on the bookstore subject whose owner's intentions are still under investigation, demanding to know why they refuse to provide information, even asking if they were bewitched by the owner. Claude simply replies with sorry, which makes the man outside incredibly frustrated, shaking his device in annoyance. The annoyed man asks, "What now?" Claude tells him that it is not just one file. The man looks completely confused, realizing he has to explain things now. Claude, looking composed while using his computer, explains that after a detailed investigation, a new subfile, No. 014, was created under file No. Looking at his screen showing folders 011, 013, and 014, Claude clarifies that file No. 013 is just regional archives, while No. Claude then shares that the elders assigned a professional examiner who reached the same conclusion as teacher Joseph. The bookstore owner is genuinely kind with no clear motives, but that doesn't mean he has no hidden ones. Claude concludes that judging by the current situation, nothing is happening, so there's no need to make a fuss. He adds that this is only a rough summary of the main file information, and the caller questions if everything is fine, asking what if his negligence puts Nakan citizens in danger and if he considers that consequence as a responsible person. The caller continues to challenge him, saying if this is how the mystery tower handles things, he is very disappointed. The man in the rain then says he will consider the proposal and will talk to the elders later, telling Claude word for word what he just told him. Claude looks relieved and happy that the caller understands their situation, hoping he has a pleasant talk with the elders. The caller feels that Claude is somewhat mysterious, though he has no proof to doubt him. The caller, cutting through the small talk, asks again why the confidentiality level was upgraded, as Claude still hasn't answered that main question. Claude states he has no say in that matter, doesn't know why, and has no power to change the confidentiality level. When asked about talking to the elders, Claude says it would be more efficient if the caller talked to them directly. The caller is frustrated, muttering that the teacher and disciple are both slick, with Claude inheriting his teacher's cunning nature. He finally decides that he will personally investigate the bookstore. Claude reacts enthusiastically, wishing him success and mentioning he heard the bookstore owner is not only kind but also helps people solve their problems, hoping he has a pleasant visit. Frustrated man pours himself a drink, looking angry. He initially seems to consider going personally but quickly changes his mind, shaking his head. He decides to forget going himself and instead thinks he can use the scholar's excessive curiosity to investigate the bookstore. He assigns them the task while looking out at the rain and the gargoyle outside the window. The scene shifts to the Nakan Mechanical Reincarnation Truth Society's factory area, which looks industrial and rainy. Inside, a group of people in lab coats stand in a sterile-looking hallway. One researcher asks when the clay child plan will end, complaining that the experiment is getting heavier and they are collecting data day and night, adding that the higher-ups won't provide funds, so progress is slow, and they are bored staying only in the laboratory due to confidentiality. Another researcher quickly tells him to stop complaining, calling it a blessing to research for the Truth Society. But the first one sighs that he's tired of these useless experimental subjects and fears all researchers will lose their minds if this continues. They wonder if there is any progress, and another person asks if anyone has reached 200% ether compatibility based on the compiled data. One researcher confirms there is one successful experimental subject, and they show several figures suspended in green fluid in large tubes. A close-up shows the most successful subject smiling slightly with tubes connected to her. A scientist excitedly points to the subject in the tube, saying she is the best one and is estimated to reach 200% ether compatibility. However, he notes that the price for this compatibility is that she can only live for a year due to the high concentration of sage stone in her blood. The lead researcher asks what happens after a year, and the other explains that the sage stone's regeneration power will gradually fail, causing her compatibility to increase. The explanation continues that finally, the experimental subject will lose control of the ether flow and expand like a balloon and burst, which will also cause the laboratory to explode, ending their long working hours, which one researcher surprisingly calls nice. Another researcher replies that this is dangerous, urging positivity, and says their place is the only research organization in Nakan with a future and they should be grateful to work long hours for efficiency. One researcher curses the idea of gratitude and says he would rather have his monthly salary, but another says Andrew doesn't have enough funds, though that old man can always flirt with rich women, followed by maniacal laughter. Back to the subject in the tube. A close-up shows her hand moving slightly and an indicator shows some activity with an ellipsis below. A wide shot shows the woman suspended in the glowing green fluid inside the large container. A close-up of her face shows her opening her eyes with a blue iris, looking surprised or dazed, with some liquid near her mouth. The view shifts to look through a window or circular frame at a bright, glowing moon in the rainy night sky. The final section shows the woman inside the large capsule again, bathed in green light, standing with her back to the viewer. There are close-ups of her striking blue eye, her hand moving, and the liquid around her. Her hand seems to react, and a crack appears in the surrounding fluid or glass structure with a sharp sound effect. It was raining hard in the city, and something big seemed to be happening outside a building. A stylish person looked out into the rain and asked if the members of the Spiders had arrived yet. Another person confirmed they were there, saying they gathered everyone to attack the White Wolves at their stronghold on 52nd Street. The first person sensed that this place was the final base of the White Wolves, meaning this attack would be their last big fight against them. This battle might also end the whole magic mirror event, and with it, their long wait for revenge. They believed that no matter how strong the new hunters were, they could not stand against them if other organizations didn't support them. The speaker declared that in Nakan, there was no room for two huge hunter organizations, so they must completely destroy the White Wolves and take everything. The most important thing among everything they wanted was something from the White Wolves' headquarters from years ago. The important thing was the tainted blood formula from the Wolves of the Sky Court, which was the base for all White Wolves in Nakan. Someone admitted that even though they were promoted to the third leader, they were still new to the secrets, but they were brought here on Harris's direct order. This suggested that Harris, the top leader, thought highly of this person, maybe even considering them for the second leader position soon. The speaker assured the promoted person that Harris, despite looking fierce, was actually not a bad person, and they knew him well from working together for many years. This speaker was then identified as Kaki, the second leader of the White Wolves organization, who hoped the newcomer would get along well with others. Kaki then asked if Harris was still working on the tainted blood formula, as Kaki had brought Miss Jai there as ordered. The person doing research, presumably Harris, told Kaki not to rush, as researching the tainted blood formula was difficult and needed focus. Harris thanked Kaki and then questioned if the person brought in was Jai Bonon's famous daughter. This powerful-looking man, Harris, the first leader of the White Wolves, was observed by the newcomer, who noted his terrifying, evil wolf-like expression. Harris told the young woman that from now on, she needed to remember she would lead a part of the big organization, and he wanted to explain why he called her. He then stated he would give her a part of the original White Wolves formula to train her subordinates. Harris explained that the blood of the dream beast was very toxic, and without a proper formula, it was poison, making the original formulas very valuable. He continued that only by mastering a complete and perfect formula could one continue to create new hunters. This power was passed down since ancient times after many tests, resulting in harsher formulas with more intense side effects, leading to a high chance of death upon the first injection. However, the upside was that one's power increased greatly compared to experimental formulas, and Harris looked intensely at the box. Harris instructed that for the growth of the White Wolves, this unstable power must be used wisely, as the foundation of any hunter organization was possessing the tainted blood formula. The newcomer thought that if the spiders got the White Wolves formula, no one would object if she claimed to have the White Wolves bloodline, and she clenched her fists. She also needed the White Wolves information to hide her source of information, which would help Ryan's soul improve and benefit the spiders. With determination, she said, found it, and ordered Marcus to investigate the last stronghold of the White Wolves to find the original formula. The leader of the spiders ordered everyone to attack, kill all the White Wolves hunters, and leave no one alive. The spider members prepared for the fight, with one holding a large spike weapon, ready to strike. The leader declared they would move to find Harris and end things now, and her subordinate agreed. Meanwhile, the White Wolves' location was being attacked with powerful strikes hitting a clock tower. In the rainy night, various White Wolves members, armed with guns and scythes, looked ready for confrontation. One powerfully built member with glowing red eyes charged forward, chains flying around him. A huge impact shook the ground where the attack landed. The focus shifted to a dark, tall building, likely the White Wolf stronghold, lit up by the storm. Rain poured down onto a roof area, mixing with what looked like blood staining the surface. The scene moved underground to the 52nd Street confluence node of the Nakan sewerage system, where a small rat scurried by. Deep inside the sewer, a man, clearly injured and covered in blood, was seen floating near the ceiling pipes. The injured man, looking defeated, slumped down onto the floor, surrounded by blood. A close-up showed the man breathing heavily as a rat sniffed around the blood near his feet in the dark. The defeated man looked up with effort as several dark figures appeared down a long tunnel-like hallway towards him. The dark figures approached the fallen man, one standing directly over him. One of the dark figures violently stepped on the defeated man's leg, causing him pain. Then, one of the hooded figures swiftly stabbed the defeated man, resulting in a massive bloody injury. More of the dark figures, all wearing hoods with glowing red eyes, surrounded the scene, looking menacing. A close-up showed the defeated man's hand lying in a pool of blood, while the dark figures advanced. Among the dark figures, one showed a terrifying, white, mask-like face with fangs, while another had monstrous teeth visible through its hood. A close-up of the terrifying figure showed one side of his face scarred and monstrous, with a glowing red eye. The monstrous figure seemed to rip something bloody, and a creature resembling a wolf with glowing red eyes appeared, biting onto something fleshy and red. Deeper in the darkness, massive, shadowy serpent-like creatures with glowing red eyes lined the walls of a cave or tunnel. silhouetted figures stood in a brightly lit archway further down the tunnel lying by these shadowy forms. The scene showed blood pouring from structures above into a circular area below, and a pale, clawed hand reached out in the lower section. In a circular chamber with green brick walls, thick streams of red liquid, likely blood, poured down from multiple openings with debris flying from impacts. The view zoomed in on the lower half of a body being affected by the falling streams. More streams of red liquid poured into a pool on the floor, watched by two hooded figures standing on the side. A figure with a slightly visible face grinned amidst the chaos as more blood poured down, while other hooded figures stood silently. One hooded figure, whose face looked skeletal, stood looking into the chamber where the blood was flowing. Further down a dark hallway, two figures stood, one in a long white robe and the other a scantily clad woman. The man in the white robe, identified as Harris, smiled, saying that the plan was going smoothly. The woman, looking intense, replied that soon, very soon, something wonderful would happen to them. The woman, Teresa, with distinct green lips, reported to Lord Harris that they had injected everyone with excessive amounts of tainted blood as instructed. Teresa believed most of the injected people would become irrational and only know how to kill, to which Harris replied, "Well done, Teresa." Harris explained that after multiple injections exceeding the normal amount and using a formula from the Black Wizards of the Crimson Sect to keep themselves clear-headed, they were no longer truly human. Harris then questioned if it even mattered whether they remained human or not, showing a manic grin. He then pondered the purpose of the experiments as the scene shifted to a tank with green liquid and a crystal structure inside. The crystal structure inside the green tank had a central eye-like feature surrounded by sharp, light blue crystals, glowing brightly. A swirling mass of red material rose up near the crystal, as Harris stated, as long as it can be born. Harris declared that he would prepare as many sacrifices as possible, and then ordered Teresa to prepare the new fuel. Teresa, holding a limp, upside-down figure likely someone previously defeated, confirmed, "Yes, Lord Harris," as Harris stood waiting in the background. Teresa tossed the limp body downwards into a pit while Harris watched. The body plummeted quickly down with a swoosh into the green-lit depths below, signaling the beginning of the next phase of their plan. A hand reaches out, leaving bloody streaks on the green-lit wall, while another figure seems to be generating intense green energy. The green energy flares up around the brick structure with small glowing particles floating in the air. A dark, skeletal structure seems to be pulled upwards into the bright green flames at the altar. The energy builds up with loud sounds as colorful debris, likely from whatever was sacrificed, flies away from the central fire. A huge explosion of green flame engulfs the area as two robed figures stand observing near the bottom. The two figures stand by the intensely burning altar and one of them starts speaking, comparing the setup to a giant bonfire. The figure speaking wears a white robe with dark patterns and looks determined in the green glow. He continues explaining that they just need to throw in fuel and watch it burn until the spawn of the magic mirror gets enough power for its change. The circular altar glows brightly with the green energy swirling around its edges. The robed man falls back slightly, watching the process as the instructions continue about gathering energy for the transformation. The man grins menacingly, surrounded by the bright green flames with a shadowy, monstrous form hinted behind him. A grotesque, fleshy mass hangs above the flame, and strange writing indicating absorption or retraction appears near the green fire. The green flames continue to burn intensely, drawing energy inward. A cluster of bright blue crystals with strange, smiling faces emerges and seems to be growing within the green light. The crystal formation continues to grow, with an accompanying sound effect suggesting increase or growth. The man grabs his robe, feeling the energy, and describes the ring-shaped ether fluctuations expanding like a heartbeat. A close-up shows his wide, menacing smile, revealing sharp teeth. He finishes his thought about the energy resembling a heartbeat, and then someone else expresses awe at the crystal formation, calling it their redeemer and only light. The blue crystal structure is shown hovering over thick, root-like masses that seem to feed the ritual. The robed figure spreads his arms wide toward the monstrous growth above, pledging to guard the arrival, and looks forward to a time when they don't have to hide anymore. He confirms that the end of their miserable life hiding is near, just as the mysterious snake-eyed person predicted. He looks toward the burning area and notes that the black mages make excellent firewood for this purpose. He explains that using the black mages has doubled the speed of the spawn's transformation. A dead hand lies in a pool of dark liquid, and the speaker reflects that the mental support from the black mages vanished when Murphy died. He scoffs, saying the black mages fell into trouble because of their own arrogance, acting as meat shields after only a little provocation. These foolish mages were easily defeated by the secret instrument tower's hunt and fell in one strike. He further explains that black mages are great at channeling ether, making their bodies perfect vessels, which is why they burn so easily in this ceremony. The man wonders why the snake-eyed person helped him, but he accepts it, comparing the situation to how the black mages hailed the white wolf as their savior when they had no other choice. He concludes that even if it's a trap, they have no other option but to go along with it, as a faint sound suggests movement. A dark shadow figure, resembling a man in a hat, looms over him as he is instructed to burn everything to his heart's content. The shadow voice assures him that the energy gained from this ritual is far better than their old way of stealing life force. He is told to burn everything on the map of Nakan, and that fresh blood and life force are the best fuel to inflict unimaginable pain. With a sound of disappearing, the speaker is shown standing firm, accepting that inflicting pain is their fate. The man recalls that the mysterious person led him to make the first offering at the altar, which was like adding fuel to a brilliant, burning ether fire. He realizes he has already started the Scarlet Cult's flames and caused chaos in Nakan, as a skeleton is consumed by the green fire. He notes that although the Scarlet Cult didn't have many mages, they all became fuel in just a few days, but it is still not enough. The glowing eyes in the green mass suggest that their god requires more offerings. The robed man turns back to the green fire, stating that they have used up all the black mages' bodies. He confirms that God needs more offerings, as he closes his eyes in thought. Another figure, a woman, addresses him as Lord Helix, reporting that they've used all the black mages' bodies and asks if they should hunt more. The woman points out that the remaining Scarlet Cult members are scattered and harder to catch, which would also be dangerous for them. Lord Helix dismisses her worry, stating that even without the black mages' corpses, they still have plenty of offerings. He firmly tells her to stop the hunting, as a hand taps someone's shoulder or back. Lord Helix assures her and implies the others that they will soon stop living in fear, while the woman looks up at him with anticipation. A close-up focuses on the woman's toned body as Lord Helix promises victory. The woman, Teresa, seems overjoyed, calling it her greatest honor to be part of him. She replies with fervent devotion, but is suddenly interrupted by a sharp exclamation sound. The giant figure from before interrupts their exchange with a shaky report, looking anxious. The giant is sweating and clearly distressed, reporting that the spider has found them. He further reports that their meeting spot on 52nd Street has been discovered, meaning the current location is also unsafe. The giant, muscular man, chained and armored, stands menacingly, crushing a small figure in his hand. The giant says it was a close call, while Lord Helix and Teresa look on, with a flash of blue light suggesting a change in scene or focus. Lord Helix has an intense look as he senses the arrival, telling Teresa that they're here. A figure in the background calls out the name Jaijixu. The man called Jaijixu looks stern and angry against a blue, charged background. He calls Spider a merciless hyena, worse than the Knights of the Secret Instrument Tower, and states that the 52nd Street spot is compromised. There's a snap as Lord Helix interacts with Teresa, pushing aside something she was holding. The object being presented is a syringe filled with bright red liquid, resting on a soft cushion. Lord Helix gives a sharp command to a large man named Duogang to inject the substance, with a heavy thump sound accompanying the action. He tells Duogang that this is the fate of those who hunt the white wolf, and afterward, he will fear nothing. Lord Helix addresses Teresa, telling her it is time, as the syringe is presented to her. Lord Helix, surrounded by green energy, states that it is time for something important. Teresa looks up nervously, a dark, menacing shadow with a single red eye looming behind her. She enthusiastically declares that his wish is her command, Lord Helix, and that it is her greatest honor to be a part of him. A sound of ripping is heard as a silhouette suggests someone, likely Teresa, has been severely injured or killed, while Lord Helix looks on. The silhouette shows a figure whose head has been separated, dripping blood, as Teresa's voice declares they move toward victory, Master. Teresa's headless body collapses, and Lord Helix states they are moving towards victory, Master. Lord Helix grabs the head of a figure possibly Teresa's or someone else's and assures that the white wolf will never surrender. The figure's head, surrounded by green fire, opens its mouth wide as an intense whoosh sound happens. A glowing, green-eyed skull is held up, seemingly activated by the energy transfer. Lord Helix looks intensely at something, vowing to make sure the sacrifice is not wasted. He states he will make sure the service is not wasted and then addresses the coming enemy, Spider. He tells Spider to come as he was planning to destroy this entire place anyway. Lord Helix's face transforms into a skeletal, glowing green visage as he declares that since they chose to come, they should forget about ever leaving as he crushes something under his boot. The focus shifts to Duogang, the massive man, standing near Lord Helix, ready for the fight. Lord Helix calls for Duogang to come, and the sound of a heavy boot crushing something squelches loudly. A close-up of Lord Helix's glowing eye shows his intense focus as a powerful whoosh sound begins. The powerful force hits the large man, Duogang, who is now being grabbed or crushed by the hands of the already transformed or empowered Lord Helix. Lord Helix concludes that these nukers, these little spiders, will make for excellent firewood. A huge explosion happened on Street 52 while it was raining heavily. Bright beams of light shot down from above, narrowly missing some small figures. A dark figure rushed forward, moving fast through the blue light. A woman with pointed ears looked shocked as she flew through the air, dodging something. Two figures clashed amidst another big yellow explosion in a dusty area. The woman with long light hair and her companion arrived in a strange, wet location, wondering if this was the right place. She remarked that it was no surprise the White Wolf could always escape the Arcana Tower and the Truth Society pursuers. She observed the deep, endless tunnel around them. She explained that only those who had not seen this place could have expected the gigantic hidden space of nearly 50 meters under the upper district of Nakan. Looking around, what was even more unexpected was the hellish scene of death they found. The ground was littered with skulls and dead bodies, making one character exclaim this was no longer human work and ask if the White Wolf bastards were crazy. The character continued, saying they had long heard rumors of the evil deeds of the White Wolf, including massacre, but did not know they would butcher the bodies too. From the look of things, this terrible act had been happening for a while. The thought hit hard as the character realized they were too focused on using Steel Mind to investigate that they forgot to look out for an ambush. A huge, monstrous figure was lunging forward. The character who was ambushed quickly tried to face the threat head-on, while another cried out a warning to miss. The character who was protecting the woman was hit hard, causing the woman holding her weapon to look worried. A massive impact was felt as the blow landed. The two forces collided, with images emphasizing the exertion of strength from both sides. The smaller, dark-haired person looked extremely worried for their leader. The large, brutal enemy advanced on the woman, and the dark-haired protector yelled the name Kai. The woman with long hair stumbled back, looking defeated and injured, while the protector tried to get up. The injured person, Kai, despite being hurt, told the attacker not to touch Miss, as it was his duty to protect her, and apologized for overestimating himself. The woman, Miss Lai, insisted it was her fault for getting Kai injured due to her carelessness and immaturity. She took charge, telling the others to take Kai to the base for treatment and to ensure her safety at all costs. The dark-haired person then noticed a Steel Mind warning, indicating danger. A massive, grotesque enemy appeared, towering over the small group. The woman with long hair was thrown back by a powerful force. The dark-haired person, now glowing with red energy, positioned herself to fight the giant monster. The dark-haired person's eyes flashed with power as they prepared to attack. The dark-haired person delivered a powerful kick to the giant's leg, dealing a blow that shocked the monster. Miss Lai, bloodied but conscious, checked on Kai, who looked shocked and hurt. Miss Lai scolded Kai, saying the injuries needed weeks to heal and questioning why Kai took the attack when they were not even the target. Kai, held by Miss Lai, stated it was his duty to protect Miss and that he could not bear to see her injured, apologizing for worrying her by overestimating himself. Miss Lai apologized in return, blaming her own immaturity for Kai getting hurt for her sake. She then took control, saying she would get Kai to the base and that the rest was up to her. The others acknowledged the order and promised to get Kai to safety. Miss Lai's expression hardened as she recognized a power signature, the White Wizard's lightning inscription. The monstrous enemy stood tall as Miss Lai and her remaining people prepared for the next move. Someone yelled a warning to run because the tower arrow was coming. Spears rained down, narrowly missing the remaining people. Two people shouted in surprise and fear as an explosion erupted nearby. The explosion engulfed the silhouette, while Miss Lai and others huddled together. Miss Lai ordered the others to leave because it was too dangerous there. Her subordinates acknowledged the order and began to retreat. Miss Lai looked up and recognized the incoming attack as the White Wizard's lightning inscription. Lightning crackled all around as Miss Lai turned to face the source of the attack. She looked on in horror as a giant bolt of lightning struck the ground. The lightning strike caused massive damage to the ground. Screams erupted as the lightning blast scattered the remaining enemy fighters. Miss Lai gritted her teeth, letting out a frustrated sound. Red liquid poured down the cliff face, pooling below where bodies lay. A massive, swirling pink energy field trapped one of the enemy figures. Miss Lai cursed, seeing the situation worsen. She looked enraged and called out the name Harris. Miss Lai looked up at a tall tower where several shadowy figures stood, including one prominent figure. The main antagonist, Harris, with a skull-like mask, greeted Miss Lai, noting how much stronger she seemed. Miss Lai pushed forward through the electric storm. She was moving fast, trying to break through the onslaught. Harris remarked that Miss Lai was lucky to gain full control over the tainted blood. Miss Lai demanded to know if that was the power the bookkeeper gave her, while Harris regretted that the current situation prevented him from visiting her. Harris declared that now, it didn't matter, showing his terrifying, revealed toothy grin. Harris gloated, saying he knew their expected helper had no means to assist them, pointing out how abnormal her huntsmen seemed. Miss Lai demanded to know what Harris did to his subordinates. Harris explained it was a little trick. He used highly concentrated tainted blood to make them go berserk, increasing their strength multiple times and allowing them to stay conscious in beast form. However, if they lost control, they would explode. Harris continued, saying the near-death pain sharpened their minds, making them perfect killing machines as long as they could move. He then sarcastically asked if it wasn't an irony that Miss Lai obtained her power so easily while they had to trade their lives for it, claiming the world is unfair. Miss Lai fiercely rejected the idea of unfairness, stating that Harris was the one harming the huntsmen. She vowed to eradicate his evilness and free them from suffering. Miss Lai then asked Harris if these were the last of his men, to which Harris mockingly replied it was an honor. Harris boasted that even the Arcana Tower does not get this treatment and that his barely 1-month-old huntsman group has such influence. He then smirked, saying their talk wouldn't change their fate. Harris declared that since it has come to this, he won't retreat until one of them is dead, stating the survivor would decide the future of all huntsmen. Miss Lai cut him off, telling him to stop mumbling like a cuckoo, and expressed her eagerness to tear off his throat. Harris embraced his wolf form, declaring it was time to settle the vengeance between them. The white wolf transformation roared, telling Harris to be prepared to die. The massive wolfman challenged Miss Lai to come, eager to tear her throat, saying the taste of her blood must be extreme. The wolf leaped forward, anticipating the taste of her blood. The fight was on, described as a fight between beasts, a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood, a fight to the death. Internally, the person fighting Harris felt confident they could win the head-on fight. However, they admitted the uneasiness they felt must have been because they underestimated the enemy's madness. The narration switched to an internal thought. Spider was now in an all-out war with White Wolf. The huntsman with the conscious blood lacked the strength to face the White Wolf huntsman who gained strength from the tainted blood. The internal voice concluded that facing them head-on would cause heavy casualties, making them feel shameless if they hadn't considered this. They could only wish for lesser casualties and hoped the newcomers could read their intentions. The chapter ended with a fierce clash between the blue wolf and a dark wolf in the pouring rain.